How exactly can a bank legally prove that the money inside its vault actually belongs to them? In your past life, you were an absolute legendary tier apex defense attorney with a near flawless win rate. When underperforming, you would still easily send the opposing party straight to prison when performing normally. You would effortlessly send both the opposing party and their clueless legal counsel behind bars. And on the rare occasion you went completely God mode, you could literally sentence the presiding judge holding the gavel to a maximum security cell. However, a freak unpredictable cosmic accident abruptly reincarnated your consciousness into an entirely different parallel reality. In this strange new world, you are a completely bottom-tier, trash-tier rookie divorce lawyer. 2.5 grueling years post-graduation. You have only managed to secure 5 total cases, and you managed to spectacularly lose 4 of them. Consequently, since your soul hijacked this pathetic body, you haven't managed to land a single paying client for a solid half month, just as you are completely running out of options and mentally preparing to change careers. An elderly couple slowly walks right into your dilapidated legal office before you can even stand up to greet them. The old man instantly cuts straight to the chase, desperately blurting out his legal dilemma. It turns out their son has been officially arrested for armed bank robbery, and they desperately need a legal powerhouse to mount a defense, praying that someone can somehow secure a reduced prison sentence. The second you hear this, an electric wave of pure excitement surges through your veins. A bank robbery means stepping directly into the arena of heavy-hitting, high-stakes criminal prosecution. The kind of high-profile felony case that standard public defenders consider an absolute nightmare to handle. But an absolute nightmare to handle is precisely the impossible challenge you need to instantly skyrocket your firm's reputation and put your name on the map. Therefore, you calmly instruct the old man to break down the entire sequence of events and walk you through the case details step by step. The narrative unfolds like a dystopian comedy of errors. The old man had suddenly suffered a catastrophic medical emergency and was rushed to the hospital for life-saving surgery, prompting his loyal son to rush straight to the local bank to withdraw the funds required for the operation. The funds in question belonged entirely to the old man's personal savings account. But because the account holder wasn't physically present, the bureaucratic bank tellers aggressively demanded that he legally prove he was indeed the biological child of the old man, even when he slammed the official state ID cards, the family household register, and the hospital's critical condition life support notice onto the counter. They refused. The arrogant bank staff grew incredibly hostile and dismissive, stubbornly insisting that the dying old man must physically drag his body into the branch to verify his identity. Otherwise, they would permanently freeze the funds and deny the withdrawal. Yet at that exact critical moment, the old man was literally trapped inside the ICU fighting for his life and waiting on that cash to survive. How could he physically show up? How could he possibly prove it? Right in the middle of this frantic, explosive screaming match at the counter, a heavily armed crew of professional bank robbers violently breached the building and initiated a full-scale heist. One of the hardened criminals, overhearing that the old man's son desperately needed cash to save his father's life, didn't hesitate for a single second, casually tossing a massive stack of the stolen loot right into his hands. In that split second of life or death panic, the son didn't care about where the cash originated. He just grabbed the massive stack of cash and bolted straight to the emergency room. Shortly after, the entire heavily armed crew was permanently taken down by law enforcement. But because the old man's desperate son had physically accepted the dirty money, the prosecution legally branded him an active co-conspirator accomplice to the heist, slapping him with a severe charge of grand armed robbery, and handing down a crushing 20-year sentence in a maximum security prison. Driven by absolute desperation, the heartbroken old man immediately filed for a secondary appeal. Tragically, the appellate court completely upheld the original brutal verdict without changing a single thing. Now the entire nightmare has finally escalated to the absolute final supreme review phase. Once this ultimate high court strikes the gavel, all legal avenues will be permanently exhausted, and the fate of their son will be sealed forever, recalling that disastrous second trial. The old man's entire demeanor violently shifts into pure unadulterated rage. That high-priced appellate defense attorney came from one of the most elite prestigious megafirms in the southern metropolis, arrogantly marketing himself as an absolute god-tier legend in high-stakes criminal law. He straight up demanded an astronomical, non-refundable $188,000 retainer fee up front. Yet, when it actually came time to perform in front of the judge, he literally only uttered 3 pathetic lines. "My client fully accepts the court's absolute judgment." The sheer spineless betrayal left the old man violently shaking with uncontrollable anger. Seeing his distress, his elderly wife, Zhang Chuifang, hurriedly patted the old man's trembling back to calm his racing heart. Attorney Su, the social impact of this high-profile trial has completely exploded in the media. We've been officially notified that when the Supreme Review commences, the court will likely broadcast the entire high-stakes trial live to millions of viewers on the internet. We have zero trust left in those corporate megafirms. But when we approached a dozen small-time boutique offices, every single one of them was absolutely terrified to touch this impossible case. A high-profile case dominating public attention. coupled with a mandatory unscripted live-streamed Supreme Court broadcast. Hearing these incredible conditions, your internal monologue is absolutely throwing a victory party. This isn't just a tough case, this is a flawless, multi-million-dollar global marketing campaign for your office. Without showing even a microsecond of hesitation, you instantly lock down the case, boldly promising that if they aren't completely ecstatic with your results, you won't charge them a single solitary penny in legal fees. In record time, both parties slap their signatures onto the official representation contract. Right at that exact climactic moment, a young bright-eyed female college student confidently steps right through your front door. "Good morning, Attorney Sue." Intern legal assistant reporting for duty. Digging deep into the foggy recesses of your brain, you finally sift through the memories of this body's previous low-rent owner to pinpoint the exact profile of this ambitious girl. Her name is Li Shuazhen, a highly motivated intern attorney the previous owner had recruited right before you took over. Today marks her official first day on the job. Li Shuazhen is an absolute top-tier elite straight-A law student from Lanzhou University's prestigious legal department, who deliberately threw her resume at a small boutique firm purely to get thrown into the absolute deep end. You arrived at the perfect time. Grab your notepad. We are heading straight to the courthouse this exact second. In the blink of an eye, soon after, the two of you successfully retrieved a copy of the official case files straight from the courthouse archive. The moment Li Shuazhen scanned the dense legal documents, a wave of anxiety washed over her face. The fact that both the primary trial and the appellate court handed down identical guilty verdicts cast an incredibly heavy, near-impossible shadow over their upcoming Supreme Review. "Unless we can somehow unearth some groundbreaking, earth-shattering new evidence to flip the narrative," she murmured, "then realistically speaking, the High Court is almost guaranteed to simply uphold the original conviction. To make matters worse, I heard the lead prosecutor assigned to this case is an absolute savage who completely dominates the courtroom." She internally panicked. Was the very first real-world case of her career, destined to crash and burn before it even truly began. The mere thought of it left Li Shuazhen completely drowning in a suffocating cloud of sheer despair. Meanwhile, your eyes scanned the final page of the dense case file, and an airtight strategy instantly materialized in your mind. As far as you were concerned, the ultimate trajectory of this entire high-stakes trial was already a 99% certainty. "Attorney Sue, is this case truly an unwinnable nightmare for us?" Li Shuazhen was still entirely trapped in her spiral of defeatist thoughts, convinced a total courtroom disaster was completely inevitable. Glancing over at her frantic expression, you let out a calm, reassuring chuckle. You subtly shook your head with absolute composure, declaring smoothly, "Wang Xizhang's son didn't commit an armed robbery in the first place. So explain to me how it's even mathematically possible for us to lose." "He didn't commit robbery." "Attorney Sue, what on earth do you mean by that?" You'll find out the exact second the trial commences. For now, it's classified information." A confident, slight smirk played at the edge of your lips as you turned on your heel and confidently strode out of the room. What an absolute joke the word defeat didn't even exist in your personal vocabulary, though Li Shuazhen was practically dying of pure curiosity over your cryptic declaration. She knew better than to aggressively pry for more answers, quickly breaking into a light jog to keep pace with your stride. Even though this entire case had already been branded a lost cause by the legal community, you were determined to execute a flawless defense, meaning your first order of business was a face-to-face interrogation with Wang Xizhang's son, alongside the actual hardened heist crew involved in the incident, to dissect their exact unvarnished testimonies. The specific criminal file regarding the old man's son Wang Li had always been highly controversial, because his primary and secondary appeals had both crashed and burned. The Supreme Court's final binding executive mandate had not yet been officially stamped and handed down, meaning Wang Li was currently being held inside a maximum security pretrial detention facility. In record time, the formal visitation request was approved and Wang Li was escorted out. You confidently marched into the secure interrogation room with a wide-eyed Li Shuazhen trailing close behind. Wang Li's psychological state appeared completely shattered and hollow, having been utterly crushed by the consecutive defeats of his first trial and subsequent appeal. He had completely abandoned all hope of ever securing a reduced sentence. Wang Li slowly raised his hollow eyes to glance at your pristine suit. "Hello, attorney. Do you realistically think I still have a fighting chance to beat this nightmare?" A sharp, confident smirk played at the edge of your lips. "A fighting chance, it's an absolute certainty. I gave your parents my ironclad bulletproof word." Wang Li snapped his head up with absolute violence, his eyes wide. "Are you serious? You're not just selling me fake hope to clout chase, right? My firm operates on a strict zero-fee guarantee if we don't bring home a total victory. Do you truly possess the absolute tactical blueprint to crush this litigation? The exact microsecond I made the conscious decision to accept this file, I already possessed 100% tactical certainty. As long as you execute my exact instructions with flawless cooperation, obliterating your current prison sentence will be an absolute walk in the park. The ultimate scale of your sentence reduction hinges entirely on your compliance." Your lips curled into a subtle, dangerous smile, harboring absolute god-tier confidence in the imminent courtroom slaughter. I'll cooperate, I'll do literally whatever you say, witnessing your radiating, unshakable aura. Wang Li nodded his head with frantic, aggressive intensity, a brilliant spark of hope violently reigniting within his hollow chest. You subtly gestured for Li Xuezhen to prep her laptop for precise deposition logging, methodically dissecting every single minute detail of the original crime scene, alongside the exact flawed testimonies delivered during the disastrous primary and subsequent appellate court proceedings. Exactly 30 minutes of surgical interrogation later, you strode out of the maximum security facility with a look of supreme satisfaction. Every single tactical variable you needed to confirm had been perfectly verified. It was officially time to go to war in the courtroom. The moment you crossed the threshold back into your law firm, you effortlessly engineered the litigation briefs, sliding the finalized lethal payload of legal documents over to a waiting Li Xuezhen. Li Xuezhen eagerly popped open the folder scanning the text, before violently rubbing her eyes in absolute sheer disbelief. Attorney, so blasting them with a legal offensive this insanely aggressive? Isn't it a bit too psycho? This catastrophic circus of a case demanded an absolute tactical nuclear strike from the start. If we don't go completely unhinged, we don't win. Now move out and file the paperwork immediately. Li Xuezhen exited the office with weak, trembling steps, her entire understanding of the legal system thoroughly shattered. Shortly after the official Supreme Review application regarding Wang Xizhong's wrongfully convicted son Wang Li was formally processed, and instantly secured high-priority judicial clearance. Simultaneously, a catastrophic Supreme Court summons violently detonated inside the corporate bank's legal department. The high-paid corporate attorneys inside the bank's inner sanctum were left utterly paralyzed with shock upon reading the formal petition, an aggressive, unprecedented lawsuit accusing the banking institution of gross unlawful misconduct that directly triggered the catastrophic wrongful imprisonment of the client Wang Li, demanding immediate unconditional compensation for lost wages, alongside a heavy $200,000 punitive damages payload for severe emotional trauma. What on earth is the meaning of this? In Wang Li's criminal case, their banking institution was the absolute victim of an armed heist. They didn't even demand that the judge aggressively maximize his prison sentence. Yet, out of absolutely nowhere, they had just been hit with a retaliatory corporate lawsuit and a formal Supreme Court summons. Isn't this an absolute unmitigated joke? Since when do convicted bank robbers get to play the victim card? The chief executive director of the bank was instantly pushed into a state of pure unadulterated rage over the legal audacity. He immediately mobilized his elite corporate legal department, commanding them to ruthlessly crush this litigation and set a brutal example. Simultaneously, because of the highly controversial and explosive variables engineered into Wang Li's case, stealing bank funds solely to fund emergency life support surgery for a dying father, only to be slapped with a crushing 20-year prison sentence, the narrative instantly detonated across social media algorithms. Viral comments began flooding the public discourse. Since when did corporate banks become the vulnerable victims? When you want to withdraw your own hard-earned cash, they demand a mountain of impossible verification. But when they want to prey on you with high-interest credit cards, they're suddenly super aggressive. Team Wang Li all the way. If that brain-dead banking institution hadn't intentionally weaponized malicious red tape, Wang Li would have smoothly withdrawn his father's medical funds hours prior, and he wouldn't have been forced to accept cash from a literal heist crew. Exactly when you hand over your money to deposit it, the bank tellers act like subservient, groveling servants. But the second you want to withdraw it, you're the one forced to beg on your hands and knees like a slave. You clueless clowns simply don't understand the systemic trauma banks face. In reality, the financial institutions are completely misunderstood and carry a deep burden. Think about it critically. Every single time a bank suffers a catastrophic security breach or massive funds mysteriously vanish, it's always the fault of a rogue low-level part-time employee. Yeah, we absolutely cannot blame the multi-billion-dollar banking conglomerate for this tragedy. The entire blame clearly falls on a random temporary worker. LMAO, look at this corporate bootlicker getting paid 50 cents a post. Hey bro, add me to the group chat. I also want to make easy money selling my soul to a corrupt bank. The digital court of public opinion was entirely unhinged, unleashing a savage one-sided onslaught of pure hatred targeting the bank's corporate ethics. The chief executive director of the bank stared at the viral anti-corporate backlash until his veins were practically bursting with pure blinding fury. He issued a ruthless dictatorial mandate to his legal army during the upcoming live-streamed Supreme Court broadcast. A total victory was the only acceptable outcome, and they were strictly required to completely flip the media narrative to salvage the bank's reputation. If you incompetent fools fail to secure a complete wipeout in court, he roared, I will personally fire every single member of the legal department and replace you by morning. Meanwhile, inside the quiet offices of the Baijun legal firm, you were kicked back in your executive chair, happily scrolling through the viral video feeds. Watching the public outrage effortlessly decimate the bank's public standing, a razor-sharp smirk played on your lips. As far as the current tactical board was concerned, this imminent courtroom war against the financial titans of the city, judging by the current trajectory of the battlefield. This high-stakes legal warfare against the corporate titans of Nandu Bank, as well as Wang Li's impending Supreme Court review, had successfully targeted and hyper-focused the entire nation's attention. If you bring home a victory, your legal office effortlessly achieves global stardom. And even if you somehow manage to crash and burn, your firm still captures total viral infamy. Li Shuizhen scanned the chaotic exploding digital comment sections with a heavily conflicted heart caught entirely between wild hope and sheer panic. Attorney Su, our boutique office has intentionally blown this entire situation so massively out of proportion. What on earth happens to our careers if we actually lose on a live broadcast? Imos? You kicked back deeper into your luxurious executive lounger, your line of sight briefly obstructed by a sleek suit coat hanging on the rack, subtly tilting your head to lock eyes with a nervous Li Shuizhen. There is absolutely zero mathematical possibility of a failure. Right now, I need you to hand over the research I tasked you with regarding Nandu Bank's extensive history of predatory litigation over the past few years, alongside the verified direct contact information of their former legal victims. Have you successfully organized the dossier? Slide it over so I can dissect the operational metrics. Li Shuizhen instantly extended the dense, highly detailed manila folder straight into your waiting hands. You completely bypassed the opening arguments, flipping straight to the section containing the personal hotlines of the victims who had previously been steamrolled by the bank's corporate legal army. Without wasting a single microsecond, you punched in the digits of the very first target on the sheet. Good afternoon. I am the lead counsel representing the Baijun Legal Group. My intelligence reports indicate that exactly 2.5 years ago, you initiated a formal civil lawsuit against Nandu Banking Corporation, only to be completely decimated by their high-priced legal team. Would you happen to have a strong personal interest in sitting front row to witness Nandu Bank getting absolutely slaughtered on a live Supreme Court broadcast? The exact moment you slammed the receiver down to terminate the first call, you immediately pivoted to the second victim on the spreadsheet, unleashing the exact same psychological warfare script with absolute precision. Li Shuizhen stared at you in absolute wide-eyed wonder, a spark of pure unadulterated astonishment flashing behind her gaze. She couldn't believe an attorney could manipulate the system to hunt down key material witnesses like this. Your unconventional gray hat tactical maneuvers completely defied her understanding. This rogue method was light years away from the textbook theories she was spoon-fed at law school. How could she even articulate it? The entire playbook felt profoundly sketchy, unauthorized, and totally non-traditional. Yet it was undeniably devastatingly effective. Staring intently at your relaxed composure, she couldn't spot a single trace of the stiff bureaucratic etiquette typical of high society elite defense lawyers. But the real-world street-smart tactics she was absorbing from you were priceless. Navigating the hidden psychology of human nature was lesson number 1. Weaponizing historical casualties to manufacture the ultimate witness army today was lesson number 2. When you combine these two lethal formulas together, you get a masterclass in courtroom destruction. Exactly 2.5 grueling hours of continuous psychological manipulation later, you smoothly rested the phone back onto its cradle, exhaling a long, icy breath of deep satisfaction. Every single component of your tactical chessboard had finally been perfectly aligned. The upcoming trial was officially bulletproof. Now, all that's left is to sit back and watch the courtroom carnage unfold. The very next day, the pre-trial mediation at the courthouse went exactly as predicted, complete failure. The arrogant bank executives absolutely refused any possibility of a settlement, vaingloriously boasting that they would completely decimate us in front of the judge. You utterly scoffed at their hollow, desperate bravado. Anyone can talk a big game outside the courtroom doors. But once we throw hands inside the trial chamber, they're going to get a brutal reality check on how the real world actually works. Just watch how ruthlessly I break them, and that's all that matters. The clock ticked down rapidly until the day of the trial finally arrived. Because the viral fallout of this explosive lawsuit had already caused an absolute storm across the entire internet. It was a goldmine of clickbait news for the mainstream media, before the heavy court doors even officially unlocked. A ravenous horde of journalists had already barricaded the main courthouse entrance. The corporate legal team representing Nandu Bank made their grand entrance, instantly getting swarmed and ambushed by flashing cameras and microphones. Spearheading the bank's defense was a prominent figure within their inner legal department, a sharp, overly ambitious 20-something young hotshot, named Attorney Limo. Limo cleared his throat twice for the rolling cameras, wearing a look of absolute untouchable arrogance on his face. In stark contrast to Limo and the Nandu Bank corporate, legal circus getting aggressively mobbed by the press. Your side of the courtyard was completely barren and cold. with almost zero reporters paying any attention to your arrival. Flashing a subtle calm smile, you turned on your heel, leading a silent Li Shuazhen past the security gates and deep into the heart of the courthouse. While waiting in the wings for the official commencement of the trial, Li Shuazhen's hands began to visibly tremble as she whimpered, Attorney Su, this entire high-stakes hearing is being blasted live across the entire global internet. What happens if a catastrophic error ruins our defense on air? I told you already there is zero mathematical possibility of an error. Unless, of course, the presiding Chief Justice deliberately engineers a fraudulent ruling. And if they actually dare to try a corrupt stunt like that, then this trial will become the biggest, most explosive scandal in the history of the nation. A dangerous, razor-sharp smirk played on your lips, as you subtly signaled Li Shuazhen to drop the useless anxiety and lock in. In this specific parallel universe, society held the legal system in absolute supreme regard. The rule of law possessed an untouchable, almost divine sanctity, where every single citizen stood genuinely equal before the bench, leaving absolutely zero room for systemic judicial corruption or corporate bias. If any bias occurs, we immediately launch a hostile motion for a comprehensive review, and will watch the entire corrupt panel get dragged off to prison in handcuffs. The judges themselves were legally bound to exercise maximum surgical precision under the strict, unyielding letters of the statutory code. As for the exact identities of the Chief Justice and the panel judges handling this war, you had already thoroughly memorized their entire psychological profiles. The presiding Chief Justice was a veteran female magistrate named Yu Kaixia, who simultaneously serves as the formidable vice president of the Nandu District Court, possessing an incredibly deep encyclopedic mastery of statutory jurisprudence. Having dominated the court system for decades, she has personally presided over hundreds of high-stakes trials, delivering flawless, ironclad verdicts backed by absolute legal logic. This entire explosive Nandu bank robbery controversy was deliberately placed under Yu Kaixia's direct supervision. Consequently, when it came to facing any potential corporate bias or unfair treatment, you harbored absolutely zero anxiety or doubt, knowing damn well that Yu Kaixia was fiercely celebrated for her unyielding, flawless adherence to blind justice. Inside the tense arena of the courtroom, the second both opposing legal teams locked into their designated benches, the head clerk stepped up to the microphone, aggressively projecting the official rules of order. To protect the absolute integrity of these judicial proceedings and maintain total reverence for this sacred hall of justice, the court officially mandates the following protocol: Section 1. All active litigants, their designated legal counsel, and every member of the public gallery must strictly yield to the supreme authority of the presiding Chief Justice. Section 2. The exact millisecond the judicial panel enters this chamber, and whenever the presiding Chief Justice or the independent magistrate formally delivers a binding legal decree, every single individual present in this court must instantly rise to their feet. The clerk finished the reading. We now summon the presiding Chief Justice and the honorable panel to enter the courtroom. All rise. Yu Kaiixia, flanked by two stone-faced associate judges, confidently strode onto the elevated bench. She violently slammed the heavy wooden gavel down, declaring, "This court is officially in session." The panel immediately began verifying the base identities of all legal representatives, while simultaneously, the court's high-definition digital live stream feed went fully operational across the web. A massive wave of online spectators instantly flooded the stream to witness this unprecedented clash. Meanwhile, inside the ultra-modern war room of Nandu Bank's corporate legal headquarters, the ruthless chief executive governor of Nandu Bank, Wang Wu, alongside the veteran corporate legal director Shu Jiqiang, stared intensely at the live monitor feeds. The exact moment Wang Wu saw the gavel drop, he turned his head to deliver a cold, piercing interrogation to Ziqiang. The battle has officially begun. Even though the feed only went live a few minutes ago, the stream's active viewer count has already violently surged past hundreds of thousands of concurrent users. Our corporate legal division cannot afford a single misstep in this trial. Do I make myself absolutely clear? Shu Jiqiang flashed an arrogant, dismissive smirk as he nodded. Rest assured, Governor Wang, our elite legal army has engineered a completely flawless, airtight defense strategy, in perfect alignment with your absolute directives. Our corporate division isn't merely going to secure a standard victory. We are going to absolutely slaughter them in front of the cameras, ensuring we utterly decimate the public backlash and reclaim total dominance over the media narrative. Wang Wu nodded his head in deep, sinister satisfaction. This specific judicial battle was a high-stakes, unscripted live-stream trial, and with a feeding frenzy of digital media outlets aggressively hyping the scandal. The multi-billion-dollar banking conglomerate was carrying an astronomical amount of institutional pressure. If they somehow dropped the ball during this live-stream battle, the ultimate blow to Nandu Bank's institutional credibility and corporate reputation will trigger catastrophic, completely irreversible consequences. Even Wang Wu himself, the untouchable top executive director of Nandu Bank, will face career-ending severe professional fallout. Therefore, losing this war is an absolute non-option. Back inside the courtroom, the second the basic background identity checks are fully finalized, Yukaixia heavily strikes the wooden gavel down. The court now recognizes the plaintiff to officially articulate the facts of the case, their core legal rationale, and their specific appellate demands. Sitting coolly at your defense desk, you know your precise moment to strike has finally arrived. You calmly adjust the lapels of your tailored suit, rising with absolute composure to deliver your opening salvo. Your Honor, our judicial demands are exceptionally clear and straightforward. First, our team completely rejects the deeply flawed verdicts handed down by both the primary and appellate courts. Our client is an innocent man who committed absolutely zero crimes. Yet, he was systematically framed and wrongfully convicted of major armed robbery. We officially petition this high court to completely vacate and crush the prior verdicts, wiping the slate clean and granting my client an absolute unconditional acquittal. Second, we are launching a hostile petition against the defendant, specifically the corporate entity known as Nandu Bank, demanding heavy financial restitution for the severe trauma inflicted upon my client, due to Nandu Bank's gross malicious mismanagement and illegal operational failures. My completely innocent client was catastrophic wrongfully sentenced to a crushing 20-year prison term, forced to rot behind bars inside a maximum security pre-trial cage. We demand a binding executive order forcing the bank to pay my client $200,000 in lost wages, profound emotional distress damages, and total damage to his personal reputation. This monetary figure has been surgically calculated based on tangible real-world losses. It is not a single penny over the line. Third, because Nandu Bank's toxic tyrannical actions have inflicted severe, near-fatal damage upon my client's lifelong reputation and honor within the community. We demand that Nandu Bank's executive board issue a formal, unconditional, public apology directly to my client. This mandate must include, but is not strictly limited to, pinning official statements on Weibo, viral short-form video feeds, and every major digital platform across the global internet, remaining continuously active for a duration of no less than 20 consecutive days. Fourth, we demand that the absolute highest echelon of Nandu Bank's executive suite step forward to clarify the unvarnished truth, not merely to fully restore my client's unblemished innocence to the world, but to also issue a profound, sweeping apology to every single historical victim who has previously been subjected to this exact same predatory illegal treatment inside Nandu Bank's branches. The entire live-streamed courtroom instantly drops into a dead pin-drop silence. Every single face in the room is instantly twisted into a look of absolute bewildered shock. Are this rogue attorney's insane legal demands actually serious right now? Not only is he aggressively demanding the total annihilation of 2 previous court verdicts, he is boldly declaring that a literal convicted bank robber is 100% innocent and deserves a pristine heroic acquittal. Okay, fine, even if they somehow manage to argue that insane point, letting that slide for a microsecond, he actually possesses the sheer audacity to demand financial restitution from Nandu Bank. You are literally the legal defense counsel for a convicted bank robber. Yet you are unironically dragging a major banking institution into court to force them into paying your criminal client a staggering $200,000 in lost wages and severe emotional distress damages, slapping a $200,000 price tag on a felon's ruined reputation. Are you seriously trying to pull off a second heist right here in front of the judge? Except this time you're giving it a fixed price tag and robbing them out in the open. By stark comparison, those jaw-dropping third and fourth demands actually look like absolute child's play, barely even worth debating, out on the digital airwaves inside the explosive live-streamed broadcast room. The jaw-dropped netizens tuned into the feed were completely losing their minds. And it wasn't just the ordinary civilian viewers. Even the elite panel of judicial experts, seasoned courtroom clerks, veteran defense attorneys, and seasoned legal scholars watching the live broadcast were left utterly paralyzed with sheer disbelief. Initially, the entire legal community assumed that this defensive lawsuit against Nandu Bank was a completely suicidal mission destined for an immediate crushing defeat. However, considering that this live-streamed trial has commanded such an astronomically massive public audience, and with such a legendary stone-faced senior magistrate running the bench, the defense might have successfully squeezed out a minor sentence reduction, which realistically speaking would have been an absolute win. They could have barely walked away claiming a marginal victory, but stepping up to the podium and weaponizing these completely unhinged legal demands. Bro thinks he's rubbing a magic lamp and making a wish. Even if you had a literal genie, you wouldn't dare manifest a fantasy this wild. Holy crap, fellow lawyers spam those 666 hype emojis and completely flood the chat screen right now. Honestly, at this point, it doesn't even matter if he brings home a total victory or a spectacular defeat. This legendary petition is officially the most unprecedented, unhinged alpha move in judicial history. Mark my words, this insane stunt is bound to be immortalized in university textbooks as a classic god-tier case study in hyper-aggressive litigation. Seriously, no one making a wish at a temple would dare to be this greedy. Even if Buddha himself descended into that courtroom, he couldn't pull off this miracle. Hey, you clowns in the chat need to stop laughing for a second. Another comment flashed. Let's first see how the legendary Professor Luo breaks down this tactical insanity. On his analysis channel, the legal icon Luo Daqiang subtly shook his head with a profoundly intense expression. Since the defense counsel has officially advanced these demands to the bench, he explained, he must logically possess a corresponding bulletproof foundation of factual evidence to back them up. The legal demands articulated by this young attorney may sound completely psychotic on the surface, but the ultimate outcome of this high-stakes battle hinges entirely on the strength and legitimacy of the factual evidence he is about to present. If he fails to produce any valid corroborating proof, this entire stunt will be legally classified as a fraudulent misrepresentation to the court, which amounts to committing straight perjury on a live broadcast. As a professional attorney, he wouldn't make a rookie career-ending blunder like that. Even I can't completely predict his endgame right now. Let us keep watching the chessboard unfold. Meanwhile, inside the ultra-modern war room of Nandu Bank's corporate legal headquarters, Wang Wu's brow furrowed slightly as he stared intensely at the live monitor feeds. Standing right beside him, Xu Jiqiang let out a smug, dismissive chuckle and bragged, "Governor Wang, this absurd petition is nothing more than a pathetic, desperate attempt to harvest clout and attention from the media. It's pure entertainment, nothing more." The exact second he fails to produce any real-world factual foundation or legitimate statutory argument, this clown might actually get dragged off to a prison cell himself for committing blatant perjury on live television. When that inevitable train wreck happens, our banking institution will instantly secure a flawless landslide victory in the court of public opinion. Wang Wu's icy glare remained entirely locked onto the live-streamed trial screen as he muttered, Just keep your eyes on the prize and remember no matter what theatrical stunts they pull. When the dust finally settles on this litigation, Nandu Bank must walk away with a devastatingly flawless absolute victory. Yay. Understood, perfectly understood. Xu Jiqiang groveled with a sycophantic, confident grin. Back inside the tense, high-stakes arena of the courtroom, Chief Justice Yu Kaixia stared down at the explosive, hyper-aggressive legal demands you had just advanced, her professional brow twitching into a heavy, disapproving frown. Was this unprecedented, unhinged petition completely out of line? At that exact moment, the bank's hotshot counsel Li Mo couldn't suppress a malicious, arrogant sneer as he blurted out, regarding these completely delusional demands, I must openly interrogate the opposing counsel. Do you actually possess a single shred of tangible, verifiable evidence? Or any legitimate statutory logic to back up this insane fairy tale? Because if you fail to produce anything of substance to the bench, you can be legally charged and severely imprisoned for the criminal offense of malicious obstruction of justice. You merely flashed a calm, dangerously serene smile and countered smoothly. Whether I possess the evidence or not appears to be an issue that the defense counsel has absolutely zero legal standing or right to stick his nose into. Your Honor, the opposing attorney is launching unprovoked hostile verbal assaults targeting my professional character, in a desperate attempt to violently disrupt the normal, sanctified progression of these judicial proceedings. Therefore, I officially petition the bench to impose immediate disciplinary sanctions and remove the opposing counsel from the courtroom. Li Mo's jaw dropped as he frantically prepped a furious counter-argument, but up on the elevated dais, Chief Justice Yu Kaichia's brow furrowed even deeper as she violently brought the heavy wooden gavel crashing down. Bang! The plaintiff's motion for removal is hereby denied. The objection by the plaintiff's attorney is officially overruled. Furthermore, the court has not yet granted the defense permission to address the bench. Defense counsel, you are hereby issued a formal strike one warning for unauthorized disruption. Faced with the thunderous echoing crack of the gavel and an official judicial reprimand, Li Mo had no choice but to swallow his blinding rage, forcing his venomous counter-arguments back down his throat. I swear I'm about to absolutely lose my mind with this guy, Li Mo thought, narrowing his eyes into slits, as he glared death sentences straight at your face. How could any professional be this unforgettably petty and toxic? What elite law school on earth birthed a degenerate creature like this? Not only are his core legal petitions a complete work of unhinged fiction, but the literal exact microsecond a person speaks a single syllable against him, this absolute psycho instantly tries to get them forcefully ejected from the trial. Being forcefully ejected from the trial meant being stripped of your legal authority by the court, or disrupting the opposing party's entire focus and tactical execution, forcing them to temporarily forfeit their position on the floor. It was completely obvious that his brief statement just now didn't interfere with or compromise the opposition's legal presentation in the slightest. Yet this absolute psychopath across the aisle was just that, incredibly toxic and shameless, audaciously demanding his total removal from the courtroom without a second thought. Li Mo exhaled a long, heavy breath, desperately trying to pacify his own racing heart. He reasoned that the opposing attorney's wild, hyper-aggressive legal petitions were entirely fabricated, baseless lies completely detached from reality, which explicitly sabotaged and corrupted the integrity of the standard judicial process. The moment that delusional punk fails to manufacture verifiable evidence, he will be hit with immediate administrative detention and locked in a jail cell for criminal obstruction. Not only would this high-stakes litigation result in a total effortless wipeout for the defense, but it would also hand Nandu Bank a flawless landslide victory in the global media war. There was absolutely no logical reason to let this clown get under his skin. With that comforting thought, Limo gradually reclaimed his icy composure. Up on the elevated bench, Chief Justice Yu Kai-sia's brow furrowed into a stern, disapproving line. She leaned into the microphone to deliver a cold, sharp warning to the plaintiff's desk. As the presiding Chief Justice of this supreme hearing, I am legally obligated to thoroughly verify the integrity of your claims regarding the extreme, unprecedented petitions you have formally advanced today. If you fail to produce direct factual evidence or sound statutory justification to fully legitimize them, under the strict mandates of the Criminal Code, fabricating claims before this bench will result in immediate prosecution by the state for the serious crime of fraudulent litigation, and you will be held fully criminally liable behind bars. Are you absolutely 100% certain that your legal petitions possess no fraudulent or baseless claims? Sitting right beside you, Li Shuozhen's anxious face was already glistening with microscopic beads of cold sweat. She frantically reached out to tug at the corner of your suit jacket, praying you would back down. But you merely offered an unwavering, dead serious nod to the bench. Your Honor, I am perfectly aware of the catastrophic criminal consequences of presenting false narratives here. I accept total unconditional legal liability for every single syllable I utter inside this courtroom. Boom! A massive wave of shocked whispers instantly erupted through the public gallery. Bang bang, order silence in the court. Yu Kai-xia aggressively slammed the wooden gavel down to silence the room, before fixing her piercing gaze back onto you. Very well. Since you have explicitly confirmed the absolute legitimacy of your petitions, we shall proceed to the next phase of the trial. The court now recognizes the defendant Nandu Bank to officially present their responsive arguments and their formal cross-petitions. Finally, the ultimate opportunity to slaughter this clown has arrived. Limo, acting as the champion of Nandu Bank's multi-billion-dollar empire, squared his shoulders and proudly stood up to command the room, unveiling his formal defense brief with absolute patronizing arrogance. Our official response and counterclaims to the bench are structured as follows. First, the formal defense arguments on our side are structured as follows. First, regarding the wild allegations advanced by the plaintiff, specifically the convicted felon Wang Li and his rogue counsel, against my client Nandu Banking Corporation, we officially demand a complete and unconditional dismissal of their entire petition. Furthermore, we explicitly request that this court ruthlessly penalize such malicious bad faith litigation tactics, imposing the absolute maximum legal penalties against them, to restore absolute reverence for the rule of law. Second, we petition this High Court to completely uphold the flawless judgment handed down by the Nandu Primary Court and the Nandu Intermediate Appellate Court during the initial trial and subsequent appeal. Third, we demand that the plaintiff be held fully liable for the catastrophic reputational damage inflicted upon Nandu Bank, providing total financial restitution to our brand in the exact amount of $500,000. Fourth, we demand that the plaintiff shoulder every single penny of our corporate legal fees. Your Honor, our formal response and counterclaims are officially concluded. The second Limo finished projecting his arrogant, aggressive counter-arguments and financial demands across the room. Bang! Chief Justice Yu Kai-xia brought the heavy wooden gavel crashing down. Both parties have officially finalized the presentation of their core legal petitions. The court now recognizes the plaintiff's defense counsel to present your verifiable factual evidence and corresponding statutory justification. The moment Yu Kai-xia's cold mandate echoed through the microphones, the absolute undivided attention of every single individual in the room locked directly onto your face. After all the legal demands you had advanced on behalf of the plaintiff were so completely psychotic that everyone present inside the physical courtroom, as well as the millions of eyes glued to the explosive online live stream broadcast, stared intently at you with breathless anticipation, dying to discover exactly what kind of earth-shattering factual evidence or bulletproof statutory framework you could possibly produce to back up such high-stakes insanity. Li Shuozhen, sitting right by your side, was trembling so violently with anxiety that her palms were completely slicked with cold sweat. Attorney Su, what on earth do we do now? Do we actually possess the ironclad evidentiary proof required by the bench? Wait, do we even have a single scrap of real evidence at all? Li Shuozhen was practically losing her mind, frantically and chaotically shuffling through the legal binders stacked on the table. Your mouth twitched slightly at her adorable, unhinged panic. What kind of rookie question was that? As an official intern lawyer representing your elite firm, she was still drowning in useless fear at the absolute climax of the battle. You calmly reached over, sliding the chaotic stack of papers straight out of Li Shuozhen's trembling hands, before rising to your feet with absolute untouchable composure. Your Honor, prior to officially tendering our primary statutory evidence to this bench, I request permission to have my client verbally walk the court through the exact sequence of events on the day of the alleged crime. Bang, motion granted. The court now permits the plaintiff to deliver an unvarnished personal testimony regarding the specific sequence of events. Over at the designated litigant's bench, Wang Li slowly, hesitantly rose to his feet from his uncomfortable wooden chair, glancing nervously at the two stone-faced bailiffs flanking his sides. His pale facial expression betrayed a massive amount of suffocating anxiety. Only when his trembling gaze finally locked onto your unshakable, confident aura did his erratic heartbeat gradually begin to calm down to a manageable level. Honorable Chief Justice, I am begging for permission to take a quick sip of water. The second Yu Taixia nodded her consent. The flanking court bailiff handed Wang Li a standard plastic water bottle. After gulping it down, Wang Li's visible terror completely evaporated from his face, and he cleared his throat to articulate, the absolute truth behind the entire incident is incredibly simple. My aging father was literally trapped inside the ICU fighting for his life, needing cash for immediate treatment. I rushed straight to the nearest Nandu Bank branch to withdraw his life savings. But the arrogant bank staff behind the bulletproof counter flatly rejected my request on the bureaucratic basis that I wasn't the primary account holder. They aggressively demanded that my dying father physically drag his body into the lobby, or that I somehow produce an impossible government document to legally prove that I am indeed my biological father's child. Even when I slammed our official family household register onto the desk, they said it wasn't enough. I vividly remember, right in the middle of this frantic, explosive screaming match with the bank employees, a heavily armed crew of professional bank robbers suddenly breached the building, putting the entire branch on total lockdown and initiating a violent heist. One of the tactical criminals spotted me collapsed on the linoleum floor, completely drowning in my own tears and crying out of pure desperation. He didn't hesitate, aggressively tossing a massive chunk of the stolen cash pile straight into my lap. And faced with a life or death choice, I simply grabbed that cash and bolted straight to the hospital to pay the bills. You smoothly raised your hand to command the floor. Your Honor, at this exact juncture, I petition the bench for permission to interrogate my client on several highly critical details of his testimony. The heavy gavel cracked down against the wooden sounding block. Motion granted. The court permits the plaintiff's defense counsel to thoroughly cross-examine the litigant regarding the specific factual intricacies surrounding the timeline of the heist. However, you are strictly prohibited from pursuing any irrelevant matters outside the scope of this file. Nor will the court tolerate any leading questions meant to artificially manipulate the litigant's subjective intent. Understood perfectly, Your Honor. Having successfully secured absolute clearance from Chief Justice Yu Kai-chia, you turned your sharp analytical gaze toward your client. Let's break down the facts at any point during that day. Did you actively conspire, plan, or physically participate in the execution of that bank robbery? Absolutely not, never. Understood. In that case, can you surgically break down the exact minute sequence of events when that active criminal physically forced that stolen cash into your possession? Wang Li's brow furrowed tightly into a concentrated line as he pushed his mind to dredge up the details of that traumatic memory. During that chaotic madness, I remember, it was a short-statured, heavily armed robber who spearheaded the interaction. He looked down and saw me curling into a ball on the floor, clutching my head and screaming in pure terror. He fiercely barked at me, calling me a pathetic, spineless coward, asking me why on earth a grown man was letting himself get completely paralyzed by fear like a baby. I frantically screamed back that it was because my dying father was trapped in the ICU, and the heartless bank tellers blocked me from withdrawing his life savings, and that I was only crying because I was utterly terrified he would pass away. It turned out that specific armed robber was also staging this high-stakes heist purely to secure emergency cash to save his own family. The exact second he heard about my tragic dilemma at the counter, he pulled out two massive, brick-sized stacks of bills and forcefully shoved them straight into my arms. You pressed forward with your surgical interrogation. And what happened next? The absolute microsecond that armed criminal violently forced that stolen currency into your hands. What was your immediate instinctual response? Wang Li blurted out his answer without a single moment of hesitation. I remember it with absolute clarity. My very first instinct was to violently reject the money because I was completely terrified of the consequences. But then that hardened criminal fiercely cursed at me, roaring that I was a worthless unfilial son if I let my own father die out of cowardice. Faced with that, I grabbed the money and bolted. That's everything. Excellent. Thank you for your flawless cooperation. Your Honor, our preliminary cross-examination of the litigant is officially concluded. Bang! The heavy echoing crack of the gavel vibrated through the chamber as Chief Justice Yu Kai-sia shifted her piercing gaze toward your desk. The plaintiff's factual deposition is now officially locked into the record. Defense counsel, you may now initiate your formal statutory arguments and legal interpretations. Understood perfectly, Your Honor. With absolute calm, you methodically reached into your leather briefcase and pulled out the core documents, detailing the primary trial, specifically targeting the critical arguments advanced by the prosecution's heavy hitters. Your Honor, what I hold in my hand are the transcripts from the primary trial, where the Nandu District Prosecutor's Office constructed their core allegations and secured a maximum criminal conviction against my client. Upon a rigorous legal review, I have determined that this entire verdict is riddled with catastrophic systemic errors, operating on completely irrational flawed logic, that has directly inflicted a severe unconstitutional violation upon my client's basic human rights. Inside the tense arena of the courtroom, the absolute undivided attention of every single spectator completely hyper-focused onto your figure, declaring a primary criminal verdict completely irrational. This absolute madman was openly declaring war to completely annihilate a settled lower court conviction. Every single member of the judicial jury in the packed public gallery stared at you with wide disbelieving eyes, while simultaneously the millions of viewers locked onto the viral online live stream broadcast instantly experienced a massive surge of pure adrenaline. Holy crap, this absolute savage is straight up saying, I wipe my feet on your previous court rulings. He is literally trying to completely rewrite the legal history of this entire case live on camera. Haha, this is pure insanity. I am completely hooked. The sheer unadulterated aura radiating from this attorney is unreal. I'm done spamming 666 emojis in the chat. This man is an absolute certified god-tier legend. Regardless of how this impossible legal battle ultimately concludes, just watching a boutique rookie lawyer completely dismantle a primary court conviction live is the most entertaining thing on the internet right now. Stepping up to the podium, you prepare to unleash a devastating critique against the irrational lower court verdict. Waging a desperate rhetorical war against a finalized conviction is one thing, but if he genuinely hopes to totally obliterate and vacate those rulings, he is legally required to produce explosive, game-changing new evidence to solidify his theories. Still, this young rookie defense attorney looks like he possesses absolute god-tier certainty. Hell yeah, I am zero brain bandwagon supporting this absolute legend until the bitter end. Professor Luo, stop being cryptic and break down the tactical math for us in the chat. Staring directly at the exploding viral comment feeds flashing across his second screen, Luo Daxiang kept his sharp eyes locked onto the live stream trial arena, a subtle, intrigued smile playing on his lips. This specific plaintiff's defense counsel is profoundly dangerous, he analyzed smoothly. At the absolute bare minimum, his commanding psychological presence and raw execution on the courtroom floor are completely elite and top tier. However, when it comes to the exact strategic blueprint this rogue legal titan intends to utilize to systematically tear apart and annihilate the lower court's settled conviction, even I am temporarily left completely in the dark. My personal academic exposure to this specific armed robbery file was strictly limited to analyzing the mainstream media's broadcast of the final sentencing. I have never dissected the unvarnished, raw case archives from the primary or appellate trials, making it impossible to issue a definitive mathematical forecast on his success rate. Enough talk for now, let's sit back and watch this masterpiece unfold. Up on the elevated dais, Chief Justice Yu Kai-sia's brow furrowed into a razor-sharp calculating line, her vocal tone remaining completely calm, level, and icy. Regarding the finalized criminal verdict handed down by the Nandu Primary District Bench, Defense Counsel, precisely what systemic contradictions or irrational logic do you claim exist within that ruling? You may now proceed to surgically dismantle their rationale using explicit statutory citations. Understood perfectly, Your Honor, you declared, offering a sharp, composed nod. I am now officially reading from the official Nandu Primary Court transcript, specifically detailing the exact judicial parameters used to brand my completely innocent client a dangerous felon. The lower court's logic is structured around the following two flawed pillars. First, the Nandu Primary District Prosecution aggressively alleged that my client possessed full conscious cognitive awareness that the individuals before him were active armed bank robbers, and that the massive stacks of currency they held were direct proceeds of an ongoing violent heist. Yet he deliberately made the conscious decision to accept and abscond with those funds. Based on that narrow timeline, the lower court manufactured a malicious, subjective intent ruling that my client's purpose was to actively participate in the violent forced expropriation of bank capital. Consequently, the bench legally branded my completely innocent client an active co-conspirator accomplice, or an opportunistic looter exploiting an active domestic terrorist incident, handing down an identical maximum criminal sentence. Second, the Nandu Primary Bench weaponized the brief verbal interaction between my client, specifically Wang Li and the heavily armed criminal crew, as their ultimate smoking gun to solidify this absurd conspiracy theory. Our defense team completely and unconditionally rejects both of these fraudulent pillars, and our rationale is structured as follows. First, as my client's live unvarnished testimony has just established to this high court with absolute pristine clarity, it was the active, heavily armed criminal suspect who aggressively initiated the verbal contact and interrogated my completely paralyzed client to ensure the following statutory analysis is delivered with absolute precision. I shall formally refer to my client by his legal birth name, Wang Li. First off, Wang Li's testimony explicitly laid bare the absolute truth. It was the armed criminal suspect who actively initiated the contact demanding to know why on earth he was collapsed in the middle of the lobby weeping so hysterically. The absolute second the hardened criminal learned of my client's tragic plight, he deliberately on his own accord forced the illicit cash into my client's hands, commanding him to sprint straight to the medical center to settle the emergency bills and salvage the fading life of his critically ill father trapped inside the ICU. Furthermore, during that exact microsecond of impact, Wang Li explicitly stated that his absolute internal state was one of pure suffocating dread and paralyzing terror. I must openly interrogate this bench. Your Honor, if Wang Li's immediate subconscious psychological response was absolute unadulterated fear, then how in the world is it mathematically possible to argue that from a subjective standpoint? Wang Li harbored a conscious, premeditated criminal intent to actively loot and rob this bank. That immediate protective instinct of raw terror is the true definition of Wang Li's subjective intent. And let us not overlook another explosive variable. Wang Li explicitly detailed that the heavily armed criminal violently cursed at his character. Under those ultra-high-stakes lethal conditions, the active robber unleashing toxic verbal threats against a completely helpless Wang Li proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the criminal was profoundly displeased with my client's total non-compliance. The critical pivot here is that the lethal suspect was actively wielding a deadly high-caliber weapon. A single rogue thought a single twitch of that criminal's finger would have instantly resulted in the brutal execution of Wang Li right then and there, faced with an unprecedented life or death crisis of that magnitude, where Wang Li's literal right to survive was stripped of any constitutional or physical guarantees. Under the strict unyielding letters of our statutory legal code, Wang Li's actions perfectly satisfy the absolute legal doctrine of urgent necessity to avoid imminent peril. Consequently, he is legally exempted from carrying even a single shred of criminal liability under the law. By establishing this bulletproof, mathematically flawless framework, the second pillar, weaponized by the Nandu Primary District Bench to manufacture a conviction, is officially rendered completely null void and utterly illegal, because the subsequent appellate review merely rubber-stamped this identical, catastrophically flawed logic. Our defense team officially launches this hostile, multi-layered petition to systematically vacate and crush the finalized rulings of both the Nandu Primary District Court and the Nandu Intermediate Appellate Court, wiping the slate clean regarding my client Wang Li's primary conviction and subsequent appellate doom. Boom! The entire spectator gallery instantly erupted into a chaotic, deafening roar of pure shock, faced with the razor-sharp, devastatingly brilliant logical trap you had just sprung on the room. Every single legal professional in the chamber was frozen in absolute paralyzed astonishment. But the exact microsecond the true depth of your god-tier argument finally clicked in their minds, the looks they directed at you completely transformed into states of pure unadulterated awe and reverence. Wang Li's hollow, defeated eyes instantly lit up with a brilliant, blinding spark of absolute hope. I'm actually innocent. I am finally going to be saved. I don't have to rot behind bars, and that tyrannical banking empire is actually about to get absolutely slaughtered. This is incredible. The rogue divorce lawyer, no, this legendary criminal defense titan that my parents recruited, is an absolute cheat code. Even Li Shuazhen let out a long, deeply relieved breath that she had been holding in her chest, staring up at your dominant courtroom silhouette with eyes shining with pure fanatical admiration. That look was laced with a massive amount of profound, unshakable respect. To think that a seemingly impossible case like this actually has a shot at a total victory, he's just too incredibly god-tier. And of course, credit goes to me as well. My absolute genius intuition in scouting the perfect law firm to intern at is unmatched. Meanwhile, deep inside the executive legal headquarters of Nandu Bank, President Wang Wu's facial expression had turned completely terrifyingly dark. He glared daggers straight at Chu Jiqiang, the highly paid director of the legal department, and hissed, "Director Xu, didn't you explicitly guarantee me on your life that we had a 100% win rate? Then can you explain to me what the hell is happening on that screen right now? Not only did you completely fail to lock this punk up with an even heavier prison sentence, but you also let the defense casually launch a formal petition for a total, unconditional acquittal. If that rogue attorney actually secures a landslide victory, do you have even a single microscopic clue about the catastrophic public backlash and financial devastation our banking empire will be forced to swallow? If that happens, every single corporate parasite in your entire legal department can pack their bags and get fired." Xu Jiqiang immediately forced a frantic, sycophantic smile across his sweating face. "President Wang, please, I beg you to stay calm and don't panic just yet. This legal war is far from over." Admittedly, this rookie lawyer representing the opposition does have a few dirty tricks up his sleeve. But our bank's elite in-house corporate legal team isn't blindly burning through your multi-million-dollar budget for nothing. Nor are we just sitting around being uselessly pampered by the bank's payroll. The two logical pillars this defense attorney just attacked were admittedly weak spots that he successfully exploited. But the original conviction handed down by the primary court relies on multiple layers of logic. The remaining charges on that rap sheet are the real unbreakable core of our case. Xu Jiqiang frantically pulled out the raw judicial files from the primary trial to prove his point. Wang Wu glanced down at the text, unleashing a cold, venomous snort. You better pray to God that no more unexpected disasters blow up in our faces. Keep your eyes permanently glued to this live stream trial. And the absolute second another variable shifts, you crawl straight back into my office to report it. Watching this clown show is raising my blood pressure. Just remember one thing, losing this high-stakes litigation is absolutely not an option. The exact moment Wang Wu's heavy footsteps finally faded out of the executive suite, Xu Jiqiang exhaled a massive trembling breath of pure relief, frantically wiping away the thick beads of cold sweat drenching his forehead. The sheer suffocating corporate pressure Wang Wu had just exerted on him was completely overwhelming. When it came to the intricate mechanics of this specific litigation, as the long-reigning director of the legal department, no one understood the math better than him. On paper, we are guaranteed a total stomp. Yet, the absolute second his eyes locked back onto the silhouette of the young defense attorney on screen, Xu Jiqiang, for some ungodly, unexplainable reason, felt a terrifying, intrusive thought suddenly flash across his subconscious mind. What if that absolute monster actually pulls off the impossible and wins? The moment Xu Jiqiang realized he was doubting his own corporate empire, he instantly delivered a vicious, echoing slap straight to his own face to snap out of it. Bush! That's mathematically impossible. The opposition is just a completely nameless, third-rate boutique firm with a nobody rookie lawyer. There is absolutely no mathematical way they can pull off a win. Back inside the tense courtroom arena, you confidently locked eyes with Chief Justice Yu Kaixia. Your Honor, our preliminary statutory presentation is officially complete. Yu Kaixia gave a subtle, calculating nod of acknowledgement before shifting her piercing gaze toward Limo's desk. Does the legal counsel for Nandu Bank or the state prosecution have any critical supplementary arguments to enter into the record at this time? Limo sat there violently grinding his teeth as he glared daggers across the aisle. Straight at you. This absolute bastard Tsubai sure knows how to spin a deceptive narrative. He deliberately hyper-focused on the first two minor counts, while completely burying the remaining core criminal charges on that rap sheet. Limo fiercely thrust his hand into the air. Your Honor, I have a critical, game-changing objection. Limo kept his hand raised high, formally petitioning the bench for the floor. Chief Justice Yu Kaixia shifted her focused gaze toward the defense desk, specifically targeting the agitated silhouette of Limo. Defense counsel for Nandu Bank, if you have a valid statutory challenge, you are officially permitted to present it to this court right now. Limo took a deep, stabilizing breath to reclaim his arrogant corporate composure, methodically pulling out the certified trial document. Your Honor, I am officially petitioning this bench to completely and unconditionally dismiss the plaintiff's preceding arguments. Our structural rationale is as follows. Limo aggressively thrust his copy of the primary court's criminal verdict toward the waiting hands of the court clerk. The moment he verified that Chief Justice Yu Kaixia was reviewing the text, he unleashed a sharp, thunderous declaration. Just moments ago, the plaintiff's rogue attorney, representing the obscure Baijun law firm, brazenly challenged the finalized criminal conviction handed down by the Nandu primary bench, manufacturing a highly theatrical narrative to back up his desperate claims. However, the plaintiff's counsel is guilty of the most shameless selective cherry-picking. He carefully detailed only the first two layers of the lower court's logic, while deliberately and maliciously erasing the most damning criminal charges that follow. Let us read count 3 of the certified criminal verdict. The Nandu Primary District Court explicitly established that Wang Li possessed full conscious cognitive awareness that those funds were the stolen property of Nandu Bank, yet he still made the calculated, deliberate choice to deploy that illicit capital to settle his personal medical debts at the hospital. Furthermore, during the plaintiff's live verbal testimony just moments ago, Wang Li laid out the exact tactical timeline with perfect clarity. The moment Wang Li physically crossed the threshold and exited the bank lobby, he was completely, entirely out of any active lethal danger. Yet even after escaping harm's way, he still chose to carry that stolen money to the hospital counter. Based on this unyielding chronological reality, the law dictates that this was an independent, subjective act of criminal opportunism, completely obliterating the plaintiff's desperate fabricated theory that Wang Li was operating under the doctrine of urgent necessity. Therefore, I must directly interrogate the plaintiff's counsel. The exact microsecond your client was standing in the safe open air, fully aware that he held the bank's stolen corporate property. Why on earth did he make the conscious decision to advance to the hospital with those illicit funds al satio? Why in the world did they make the sudden, desperate choice to mobilize straight to the medical center, instead of immediately dialing the emergency police hotline, to surrender the bank's corporate capital, or at the absolute bare minimum, waiting until he had safely arrived at a completely secure location, before coordinating the formal return of those funds? Yet Wang Li, by a malicious twist of choice, deliberately executed a plan to deploy that stolen cash directly into the hospital's billing system. This sequence proves two undeniable realities. First, he possessed absolute cognitive certainty that this was stolen bank capital. Second, even if we assume the armed fugitives actively coerced him, the exact microsecond his feet crossed outside the bank's threshold, Wang Li had completely escaped any active lethal danger, thereby entirely vaporizing the legal requirements for the doctrine of urgent necessity. When you merge these two damning facts together, is it not blindingly obvious that from a subjective intent standpoint, this is legally identical to actively looting the bank's vaults, purely to bankroll his own father's medical treatments? Of course, I recognize the deep human desperation driving this narrative. I would never deny or diminish Wang Li's emotional devotion or the profound love he harbors for his ailing parent. However, strictly from a factual and cold statutory perspective, the severe criminal conviction handed down to Wang Li is completely flawless and mathematically sound under the law. Honorable Chief Justice, my defensive counter-arguments are officially locked in. The moment Limo finished his grandstanding, he cast a razor-sharp smirk straight in your direction. That final emotionally manipulative monologue was a tactical play he added on the fly. He was acutely, painfully aware that this specific trial was triggering an unprecedented tsunami of volatile public scrutiny, meaning he had to secure a total courtroom demolition while simultaneously spinning the narrative to neutralize the ferocious public relations backlash. Otherwise, even if he walked away with a legal victory after the final gavel, the absolute prestige and market valuation of the Nandu Banking Corporation would still suffer a catastrophic, irreversible blow. Chief Justice Yu Kai-xia offered a subtle, non-committal nod of her head. The court recognizes the plaintiff's counsel regarding the defense's aggressive counter-argument. Do you possess any formal objections or alternative statutory counter-theories to present to this bench? Limo locked his eyes onto yours, his face twisted into an arrogant, provocative sneer. Yet a razor-sharp, dangerous smirk slowly curved across the contours of your own lips. This exact, precise moment was the lethal trap you had been patiently engineering from the start. The hour to completely execute and dismantle the Nandu Banking Corporation had finally arrived. Honorable Chief Justice, I actually raise absolutely zero objections to the core factual assertions advanced by the defense. In fact, my esteemed colleague's narrative timeline is entirely accurate. However, there is one catastrophic legal blind spot that the defense counsel has completely overlooked. I must directly interrogate the defense attorney. On what statutory grounds have you definitively established that the currency clutched in Wang Li's hand was the legal corporate property of Nandu Bank? Do you possess a single shred of concrete verifiable evidence proving those bills belong to your bank? The defense counsel just explicitly emphasized on the record that it was my client Wang Li who was clutching Nandu Bank's corporate currency when he settled those critical medical bills at the hospital clinic. Based strictly on that premise, the lower court manufactured a malicious, subjective intent to seal my client's doom. But I demand to know, how exactly do you prove that specific cash belonged to the bank? Your sudden lethal counter-question instantly left Limo completely, utterly paralyzed with bewilderment. What on earth was the meaning of this bizarre rhetorical riddle? What kind of insane legal stunt was it to demand that a banking titan prove its own stolen vault cash belongs to them? This line of questioning was getting absolutely mind-bendingly ridiculous. It wasn't just Limo who was struck entirely speechless. Inside the tense courtroom arena, dozens of spectator jury members were exchanging deeply confused and uncomprehending glances. Wait, can a lawyer even pull a stunt like that? Holy shit, this guy is an absolute menace. To think he could dig up such an impossibly savage loophole out of thin air. Even the massive sea of netizens locked into the viral live stream broadcast were collectively stunned into a dead silence for several seconds. Haha, what kind of galaxy brain logic is this? Forcing a multi-billion-dollar bank to prove that its own money is actually its own money. This rogue attorney is operating on a completely different dimension. This high-stakes legal battle has just careened down a wild trajectory that nobody could have possibly anticipated. My brain is literally short-circuiting right now. Isn't this entire trial supposed to be about defending Wang Li? Shouldn't his lawyer be desperately begging the judge for a reduced prison sentence? The bank's elite legal team was supposed to be the apex predator here. How on earth has the dynamic flipped so hard that Wang Li's defense counsel is unleashed and playing pure terrifying offense? I have absolutely no clue what's happening anymore. But damn, this judicial war is turning out to be an absolute masterpiece. Watching this rookie lawyer go full demon mode is pure unadulterated dopamine. Yeah, the legal math is completely over my head. I'm just going to wait for Professor Luo to break down the strategy later. Back at the podium, your insanely unorthodox and cutthroat interrogation had successfully blasted Limo into a state of absolute stunned silence. For the life of him, he couldn't decipher what kind of lethal trap you were trying to spring. Strictly from a procedural interrogation standpoint, your line of questioning was technically flawless and perfectly within code. But from a pure common sense perspective, it felt completely unhinged. The cash those armed maniacs looted from the bank didn't belong to the bank. Where else did it come from thin air? Meanwhile, Li Shuozhen stared at your confident silhouette, her eyes narrowing into a sharp, contemplative gaze, as the pieces of your brilliant legal puzzle finally clicked in her mind. Bang! Chief Justice Yu Kaixia brought her heavy gavel down with an echoing crack, her icy level gaze locking onto your position. Does the plaintiff's counsel possess any concrete statutory evidence or established legal doctrines to back up this highly unorthodox assertion? Qi? Absolutely, Your Honor, you declared with a confident smirk. Slowly and methodically, you pulled out a critical certified document from the primary trial archives. Honorable Chief Justice, what I hold here is the original case file from the initial trial, which was formally submitted into the record by the prosecution's own legal team. According to the precise forensic evidence presented by the state, complete and utter pandemonium erupted inside the bank lobby during the heist. And the heavily armed fugitives didn't just plunder corporate currency from the bank's main vaults. Furthermore, they also aggressively ambushed the vulnerable citizens who were currently standing at the counters, processing their own legitimate personal cash withdrawals, ruthlessly robbing them as well. All of these separate cash piles were then chaotically thrown together into massive canvas duffel bags. Now, if we review the high-definition security camera footage, the specific armed suspect who forcefully handed the stacks of cash over to Wang Li simply reached blindly into one of those mixed canvas duffel bags and randomly pulled out two heavy, tightly wrapped bricks of currency. Therefore, regarding these two specific bricks of cash, it is forensically and mathematically impossible to verify whether they originated from the bank's corporate reserves, or if they were plundered straight from the helpless hands of innocent customers, who had already completed their transactions and were merely trying to escape with their own savings. So, I demand to know, how can Nandu Bank definitively prove this specific currency belongs to them? If you cannot clear this critical hurdle of forensic identification, then the banking corporation possesses absolutely zero legal authority to brand my client a felon, or claim he actively participated in a coordinated conspiracy to rob their vault. The funds clutched by my client were admittedly the proceeds of a violent robbery, but that robbery was entirely executed by a separate gang of armed fugitives, not by my client. The moment the suspects forced that currency into my client's hands, my client's civil liability maxed out at a simple case of unjust enrichment under the Civil Code. Consequently, the burden of proof rests entirely on your shoulders. I demand that Nandu Bank provide concrete forensic evidence proving that this specific cash belonged to their vault. Boom! The entire courtroom gallery was left staring at you, their faces completely covered in massive question marks. Holy sh*t. A lawyer can actually reverse Uno a banking titan like that. Chief Justice Yu Kaixia's brow furrowed into a sharp, deeply analytical line. Throughout her legendary decades-long tenure on the bench, she had personally presided over and adjudicated hundreds of high-stakes criminal trials. Because this highly controversial Wang Li Bank robbery case carried such an unprecedented explosion of public scrutiny, the Supreme Court president had personally assigned her to wield the gavel as Chief Justice. Yet, in all her years of elite judicial service, she had never once witnessed a trial quite like this. The strategic plot twists were completely mind-bending, and the defense's cutthroat legal loopholes were so hyper-specific it borders on absolute insanity. Nevertheless, because every single word you uttered was anchored strictly within acceptable statutory boundaries, Yu Kaixia maintained her perfectly poised icy composure, showing absolutely zero emotional bias, as she slowly turned her piercing authoritative gaze toward the bank's corporate defense table. Regarding the critical forensic objection raised by the plaintiff's counsel, does the legal team for Nandu Bank possess any concrete evidence to counter this claim, or any specific statutory codes to launch a formal opposition? At that exact moment, Limo's lungs felt like they were about to literally explode from pure unadulterated rage. Since when does a multi-billion-dollar financial institution have to jump through legal hoops to prove that the money sitting inside its own heavily fortified branch vault actually belongs to the bank? Limo desperately wanted to slam his fist down and unleash a torrent of toxic unhinged profanities, but he had already been slapped with a severe official contempt warning by the bench. One more strike from Chief Justice Yu Kaiixia and he would face a brutal fine and suspension. And if things got any worse, he risked being forcibly expelled from the entire trial, left with absolutely no other choice under the sun. He had to desperately force his soaring blood pressure down and swallow his rage. Slowly raising his hand, he gritted his teeth and declared, "Objection, Your Honor. I absolutely reject this ridiculous hypothetical narrative pushed by the plaintiff's attorney. As long as clients are physically situated inside our branch, the bank possesses the full corporate right and duty to safeguard those clients' security and privacy, since those specific bank customers had not yet crossed the outer threshold of the facility. Any stolen capital must naturally be classified under the bank's operational jurisdiction, because any financial devastation inflicted upon our clients in that lobby requires the banking institution to shoulder either the primary or total liability. Based strictly on this standard division of corporate responsibility, if a client has not physically departed from the perimeter of the bank lobby, then that currency is automatically recognized as the bank's legal property. There is absolutely no logical need to differentiate whether the vaults or the clients were plundered. Regardless of whether the armed fugitives looted the tellers or the walk-in customers, anything taken inside that bank lobby falls squarely under the umbrella of bank assets. Limo locked his glaring bloodshot eyes straight onto the plaintiff's desk, radiating a wave of pure toxic resentment directly at you. But you merely flashed a totally unbothered razor-sharp smirk right back at him, casually raising your hand to petition the bench for the floor. Honorable Chief Justice, regarding the defense's bold claim that if a client is ambushed inside the branch lobby and hasn't physically crossed the outer perimeter of the facility, the bank automatically assumes total liability for the financial loss, thereby supposedly proving that the customer's money magically mutates into bank property. I officially challenge this hypocritical corporate narrative with a massive objection. I am now entering into the official record a certified precedent from a highly publicized trial adjudicated exactly 6 months ago. The specific legal battle in question unfolded as follows. An ordinary citizen was standing at a teller window withdrawing his hard-earned savings. The literal microsecond the physical cash touched the customer's hands, a predatory robber who had been lurking in the shadows of the lobby instantly pounced on his target, executing a violent blitz. The criminal successfully fled the scene with 150,000 RMB stripped straight from that innocent client. The perpetrator was eventually hunted down and captured by law enforcement. But because the illicit funds had already been entirely squandered and liquidated, the bankrupt criminal possessed absolutely zero assets left to seize. Consequently, the victimized customer turned to the bank to demand full financial restitution, filing a formal high-stakes lawsuit that dragged Nandu Bank straight to the courtroom floor. Yet, what did Nandu Bank do? They hid behind their infamous funds dispatch zero liability corporate policy, viciously arguing that the victim simply failed to protect his own personal property. They aggressively submitted that cold corporate argument as their primary line of defense, ultimately crushing that poor customer and causing him to lose his case entirely. So I must ask this high court, is this what Nandu Bank considers safeguarding the personal property and financial security of citizens standing inside their lobby? Is this the absolute garbage narrative that the defense is trying to sell us today? That as long as a client hasn't physically stepped outside, their money is magically under the vault-tight protection of the bank's liability. The massive stash of funds never actually breached the physical perimeter of the bank. Therefore, the client's capital remains under the absolute ironclad protection of the financial institution. That any sudden financial destruction is strictly bankrolled by the bank. Regarding this absolute double standard, our team raises a massive uncompromising denial. Honorable Chief Justice, the plaintiff officially petitions this bench to call that exact victimized bank customer to step forward as our star witness. Chief Justice Yu Kai-sia offered a firm calculating nod of approval, as her heavy wooden gavel came smashing down with a sharp crack. The plaintiff's formal petition to introduce a witness to the stand is officially granted. The moment the words echoed through the room, the heavy courtroom door swung open and the bailiff escorted a woman looking roughly, in her mid-40s to early 50s, straight down the center aisle of the active tribunal. The instant this ordinary middle-aged woman crossed into the courtroom arena, she locked a venomous, unwavering glare directly onto Limo's face. Limo's heart suddenly skipped a beat, though he couldn't explain why. A massive, deeply ominous wave of dread instantly washed over his subconscious mind. Up on the high judicial bench, Chief Justice Yu Kai-sia began reading aloud the verified witness data. Witness appearing before the court, legal name Wang Min. Age 46. Do you confirm these personal identification records are entirely accurate? Wang Min nodded her head with intense emotional force. Honorable Chief Justice, my name is indeed Wang Min, and those records are 100% accurate. The moment her identity was explicitly verified on the record, Yu Kai-sia calmly spoke again. The identity of the witness is officially confirmed. You may now proceed to describe the specific events regarding your case. The absolute second Wang Min received the official green light from the bench. It was as if an emotional dam broke, giving her the ultimate outlet to unleash her buried rage. Her voice boomed across the chamber. Exactly 6 months ago, I went to withdraw a sum of money from my account at the Nandu Banking Corporation. To a massive elite financial empire like Nandu Bank, that amount probably seems like micro change. It was 150,000 RMB. But to my family, that was the blood, sweat, and tears my husband and I spent years slaving away to save. All meant to fund our only son's future wedding dowry. The exact microsecond the teller slid that hard-earned cash across the counter, a violent criminal who had been lurking right there in the lobby pounced on me, ruthlessly ripping away the entire life savings. My family had broken our backs for years to accumulate. By the time law enforcement tracked down the monster, the money had already been completely spent. We followed a lawyer's advice and dragged the bank to court to demand justice. But Nandu Bank hid behind their disgusting funds dispatch zero liability policy, viciously arguing that I lost my money purely because I failed to protect it and they refused to pay a single dime. Because of their corporate legal tricks, I lost my lawsuit entirely. So today, I'm standing right here because I want to look Nandu Bank dead in the eye and ask, what the hell is the meaning of this? Are you absolute hypocrites running a total double standard when I sued you for justice? You confidently claimed funds dispatch zero liability under the law. But now that your precious banking empire is sitting in the hot seat as a criminal defendant, suddenly you're spinning a magic tale that anything plundered inside the bank lobby counts as a devastating loss for the clients, meaning the bank must step up and assume the primary liability, or assume total corporate liability, based on your own garbage division of responsibility. If a customer hasn't physically stepped foot outside the lobby, then that money automatically belongs to the bank. By that exact logic, shouldn't you cough up my hard-earned life savings right now? Tell me, isn't that exactly what your logic means? Fuck you, Nandu Bank, pay me back my money. Wang Min had somehow managed to keep her voice level at the absolute beginning of her testimony. But the more she relived the betrayal, the more uncontrollably volatile. She became ultimately hitting her breaking point and launching into a spectacular, unhinged tirade. Her words were raw savage and completely filled with venom. The bailiffs desperately tried to restrain her from the side, but her fury was completely unstoppable. Instantly, both the live gallery and the massive stream chat exploded into a frenzy of aggressive gossip. Men looking at the actual legal receipts, the Nandu Banking Corporation is running a world-class hypocritical double standard. On one hand, they act like an innocent, victimized saint. But on the other hand, they're nothing but predatory villains actively bleeding people dry. Getting involved with Nandu Bank is a literal curse. I'm pretty sure. Other financial institutions aren't even close to being this disgustingly corrupt. Honestly, who knows? Drop a comment below and let us know which sketchy banks we need to boycott, so we can all steer clear of these corporate landmines and protect our funds immediate. Across the viral live streaming platforms and secondary broadcasts, covering the trial in real time, countless netizens were ruthlessly tearing the bank to absolute shreds. Back inside the tense courtroom arena, Chief Justice Yu Kai-xia observed that the plaintiff's star witness was completely losing her psychological grip under the weight of her raw emotions, prompting her to bring her heavy wooden gavel slamming down with an echoing crack. The plaintiff's witness is firmly instructed to maintain proper emotional decorum. Launching vulgar profanities against the defense team is strictly forbidden within this tribunal. Consider this your first official warning. It's the moment the Chief Justice's authoritative icy voice boomed across the chamber, Wang Min's explosive rage was instantly snuffed out, snapping her back to reality. I am incredibly sorry, Your Honor. I completely failed to keep my raw emotions in check before this high bench. Please forgive me. Yu Kai-xia's stoic, razor-sharp expression didn't alter in the slightest. Witness for the plaintiff Wang Min, is your official testimonial statement fully entered into the record? Yes, Honorable Chief Justice. My testimony is officially complete. Bailiffs, please escort the plaintiff's witness out of the courtroom arena. The moment Wang Min's silhouette exited the heavy double doors of the tribunal, Chief Justice Yu Kai-xia shifted her piercing icy gaze straight toward Li Mo, regarding the devastating point raised by the plaintiff's witness, specifically that the Nandu Banking Corporation refuses to honor its operational duty to safeguard the personal assets of customers standing inside its lobby. Does the defense team for Nandu Bank wish to submit any critical supplementary evidence to clarify the exact factual circumstances of that preceding case? Li Mo white-knuckled his fist so hard his bones cracked, desperately forcing his spiraling mind to regain its cold corporate composure. This high-stakes legal warfare had mutated into an absolute agonizing psychological torture chamber for him. A sickening, suffocating dread was creeping in, telling him he might actually lose this case. Exhaling a long, shuddering breath, he finally steadied his trembling voice. Honorable Chief Justice, the witness just presented by the plaintiffs. Counsel openly unleashed a barrage of toxic profanities against Nandu Bank right inside this tribunal. Consequently, I am officially challenging the psychological stability and mental competence of that witness. Therefore, it is the defense's firm position that the volatile, emotional testimony delivered by the plaintiff's witness on the record is completely compromised and legally inadmissible before this high court. The exact moment Li Mo finished his desperate play, his eyes locked onto you across the aisle, and seeing the subtle mocking smirk playing on the contours of your lips. An icy spike of pure instinctual panic violently pierced through his chest. Just as Chief Justice Yu Kai-xia was analytically weighing whether to grant Li Mo's desperate procedural petition, you calmly hoisted your hand into the air, instantly drawing her sharp focus. The floor recognizes the plaintiff's counsel. Do you have a formal counter-argument to enter? 或者是 any critical supplementary facts to submit to this bench? Fashioning a lethal calculated smile, you slowly raised a massive stack of certified legal dossiers high into the courtroom light. Glancing over the heavy packet clearly contained dozens of distinct verified case profiles. Limo stared at the paperwork, his eyes wide with absolute bewilderment and horror. Yu threw a mocking cold glance straight back into his panicking eyes, before addressing the bench with absolute authority. Honorable Chief Justice, my team is perfectly content to concede to the defense counsel's motion to dismiss that single testimony. However, I hold right here the certified affidavits of an entire army of additional witnesses, who are all formally prepared to take the stand and testify against the Nandu Banking Corporation, proving a systemic historic failure to safeguard the personal assets and financial security of ordinary citizens trapped inside their facility boundaries. Limo's eyebrows twisted together into a tight, horrified knot of absolute agony. Are you serious right now? Is this absolute bastard ever going to stop? He was completely, utterly tilting on the courtroom floor. Limo couldn't even find the words to describe the sheer chaos imploding inside his mind. He had just spent his precious tactical energy arguing that your witness was a volatile, unhinged anomaly with mental health issues. Yet, instead of wasting time debating that specific point, you simply bypassed his trap and pulled an entire mountain of fresh witness profiles out of your back pocket. How could someone play this dirty? This was getting absolutely mind-bendingly ridiculous. Limo had masterminded countless high-profile corporate litigations throughout his elite career, but he had never in his life clashed with a courtroom demon like you. This was a textbook absolute mental demolition live on the record. Your lips curled into a razor-sharp victorious smirk as you silently watched Limo's arrogant corporate facade crumble into dust. What's wrong, Big Shot? Weren't you acting incredibly cocky just a minute ago? Didn't you actually believe your elite corporate legal team could stand in the ring and trade blows with me? I'm done wasting my breath playing your childish debate games. Oh, so you want to claim this specific witness is mentally unstable and compromised? Fine then, what about all these other victimized citizens? You can't possibly pull that exact same trash excuse for all of them, can you? Come on, keep that same energy. Weren't you corporate elites laughing at my Bajun law firm, mocking us as a joke that only handles petty divorce consultations? What's wrong with the firm doing marital consultation, huh? When it comes to high-stakes criminal litigation, I will still break you and leave you utterly directionless. You flashed a devastating razor-sharp smile before raising your voice to address the bench. Honorable Chief Justice, the sheer mountain of forensic evidence my team has accumulated is more than enough to prove that this financial institution has a historic track record of utterly failing to protect its clients' assets. Therefore, we formally petition this High Court to completely dismiss the entire underlying premise of the defense's corporate liability narrative and strike their arguments from the official record. Bang, Chief Justice Yu Kai-Xia slammed her heavy wooden gavel down. The plaintiff's explicit reasoning for this dismissal is hereby denied. The statutory basis for this denial is as follows. Under established financial codification, banking institutions possess an absolute non-negotiable legal obligation to protect customer capital. The specific civil cases introduced as evidence by the defense do not constitute a universal precedent to erase that statutory duty. However, the plaintiff's core procedural request is officially granted under the following rule. The defendant, the Nandu Banking Corporation, has clearly defaulted on its fundamental obligation to guarantee the safety of its lobby clients. The exact microsecond the heavy gavel struck the sound block, Chief Justice Yu Kai-Xia's intricate legal breakdown had been articulated with absolute crystal clear precision. Unfortunately for the massive wave of ordinary citizens watching from the sidelines, the complex legal jargon of this viral live broadcast flew completely over their heads, leaving them utterly baffled as to what just happened. Desperate for answers, they immediately flooded the comment section with frantic questions. Professor Luo, what on earth does she mean by denying the reasoning but granting the request? This makes zero sense. Yeah, my brain is literally turning into absolute mush right now. Professor Luo, please drop some knowledge and break this madness down for us. On the analysis stream, Professor Luo Daqiang flashed a calm, knowing smile, instantly stepping up to decode Chief Justice Yu Kai-Chia's high-level judicial ruling for the masses. The reason the court formally denied the plaintiff's specific rationale is simple. The plaintiff's legal team argued that their evidence proved the bank holds absolutely zero inherent responsibility to protect customer assets inside its walls. But under strict statutory codification, any financial institution operating a physical branch is legally mandated to safeguard the financial security of its patrons within that perimeter. Just because Nandu Bank used dirty corporate loopholes to defeat its victimized clients in the past does not mean they are universally exempt from the law. If the Chief Justice had blindly accepted the plaintiff's exact wording, if the Supreme Judge ultimately rules in absolute agreement, she would have officially codified a dangerous loophole stating that financial institutions possess absolutely zero core responsibility to guarantee the physical safety of their clients' funds. However, by explicitly rejecting the defense's dynamic corporate narrative, she successfully maintained total control over this high-stakes arena. So, given that Nandu Bank completely defaulted on its primary operational duties, How exactly should a true legal vanguard handle the fallout? Chief Justice Yu Kai-xia executed an absolutely brilliant galaxy brain tactical maneuver here. She flat out denied the plaintiff's underlying statutory rationale, thereby flawlessly maintaining the absolute supremacy and dignity of the criminal code, yet simultaneously granted the actual court procedural request. This explicitly brands Nandu Bank as utterly negligent in its corporate obligations. The reality is that throughout this entire legal war, the Nandu Banking Corporation's elite squad completely miscalculated their strategy from the absolute beginning, allowing themselves to be thoroughly baited into a lethal trap orchestrated by their opponent. Professor Luo Daqiang slowly shook his head as a knowing smile crept onto his face. In this judicial war, the massive corporate titan known as Nandu Bank is about to suffer a catastrophic defeat. Hold up, Nandu Bank is going to get absolutely crushed. If Professor Luo says Nandu Bank is completely cooked, then there is officially zero hope of survival for these corporate clowns. No doubt about it, facts are facts. Exactly. Let's not forget the sheer legal genius we are listening to right now. Luo Daqiang glanced over the exploding live comment section, letting out a soft chuckle. Alright, my friends, this high-stakes legal showdown is rapidly approaching its absolute climax. Let us lock in and witness the final closing argument and the ultimate verdict from the bench. Back inside the tense courtroom arena, the moment Yu Kai-xia's sharp adjudication echoed through the space, Limo instantly hoisted his hand, desperately trying to launch a frantic procedural challenge. Objection, Your Honor. This bench has not yet permitted me to deliver my supplementary counter-arguments. I formally move to declare the court's recent ruling completely invalid. Motion denied. Limo's face instantly went entirely black. Motion denied? What kind of absolute sorcery is this? With all due respect, Chief Justice, I demand to know the statutory basis for this immediate denial. The final judicial ruling on this matter has already been explicitly entered into the record, and the defense has been formally notified. Your petition to invalidate is entirely without merit. Should the defense counsel desire to pursue this procedural grievance further, your team is perfectly free to file an administrative appeal after the formal adjournment of these proceedings. But as for right now, your motion stands completely denied. If the defense counsel chooses to stubbornly persist in litigating this closed topic on the record, this bench will immediately hit you with a second official contempt warning. Limo stared helplessly up at the high judicial bench, overwhelmed by a suffocating sensation of swinging wildly in the dark and striking absolutely nothing. He was being completely ruthlessly suppressed, and the sheer humiliation was driving him insane. Gritting his teeth, he managed to squeeze out a few strained words. Understood, Honorable Chief Justice. Yu Kai-xia cast a cold, thoroughly unbothered glance over at the defense table, staring directly into the hollow, defeated eyes of Limo, before shifting her focus onto you and bringing her heavy wooden gavel down with an echoing crack. The court will now recognize the plaintiff and the defense to deliver their final closing statements before this tribunal. Counsel for the plaintiff, you may now present your final closing statement to the court. Understood, Honorable Chief Justice. When it comes down to the wire, the absolute most critical purpose of a closing statement is whether or not you can successfully move the hearts and minds of the judiciary. Naturally, you had already anticipated this exact moment and prepared an ironclad strategy. There was absolutely no need to weaponize cheap, overly emotional tearjerkers here. As long as this high court adjudicated the case strictly by the book, there was mathematically zero chance that your team would suffer a defeat, and Wang Li's original unjust sentence would inevitably be completely overturned. Based on your exhaustive background research on Chief Justice Yu Kai-xia, you knew this legendary jurist held the literal textual interpretation of the law above all else. To her, the sacred letters of the statutory code were absolute, supreme, and completely non-negotiable. You slowly and confidently stood up from your seat, adjusting your suit jacket. Honorable Chief Justice and members of this distinguished panel, in light of the comprehensive ironclad forensic dossiers and physical evidence my team has entered into the record, the plaintiff has absolutely no desire to clutter this tribunal with redundant arguments. The singular truth I wish to leave with this court is simple. True legal justice will never allow an innocent citizen to be wrongfully condemned, nor will it ever let a corrupt corporate entity manipulate the rules to exploit others. It is our ultimate hope that this bench will render its final judgment based solely on the pure, unadulterated mechanics of the law, staying fiercely true to the sacred judicial oath. Yu Kai-xia stared back at you with a flash of profound, undeniable satisfaction in her eyes, offering a subtle nod. The final closing statement for the plaintiff is officially concluded. Moving forward, the floor is now recognized for the defense to deliver their final statement. Limo was acutely, terrifyingly aware that this final closing argument represented the absolute last line of defense for the multi-billion-dollar Nandu Banking Corporation. The cold, suffocating intuition screaming in the back of his mind told him that this high-stakes trial had slipped entirely out of his corporate hands and was heading for disaster. Limo slowly rose from his chair, his voice straining under the immense pressure. Honorable Chief Justice, and members of the bench throughout the entirety of these complex legal proceedings. Our institution, Nandu Bank, has consistently held the undeniable status of an innocent victim. While I understand that human empathy is a natural emotion, the grand majesty of the law must remain completely blind, unyielding, and ruthless. The undeniable reality is that Nandu Bank is the aggrieved party that suffered a violent heist. The absurd notion pushed forward by the plaintiff's counsel, which demands that we, the literal victims of a robbery, should cough up massive financial restitution, is a complete distortion of justice and defies all logic. The defense officially rests its closing statement the moment Limo finished his desperate last-ditch plea to the bench. Yuchaisia maintained a completely stoic, unreadable expression as she shifted her piercing gaze directly toward the defendant's box, looking straight at the shivering Wang Li. The court now recognizes the principal party, Wang Li, to deliver her own final statement. Wang Li slowly lifted her tear-stained face, glancing nervously up at the high, imposing judicial bench, before turning her eyes toward you, drawing strength from your calm presence. Honorable Chief Justice, and members of the panel said, I have absolutely no objections or further arguments to raise against the conduct of this trial. I am completely prepared to accept whatever final judgment this court deems just. Her emotional statement was officially concluded. This court is now in recess. Proceedings will be suspended for exactly 30 minutes. We will reconvene in 30 minutes to officially hand down the final verdict. Chief Justice Yu Kaixia brought her heavy wooden gavel slamming down, plunging the entire courtroom into the tense waiting phase of the official recess. The absolute microsecond Yu Kaixia announced the temporary suspension of the trial. Everyone present within the active tribunal immediately stood at attention, respectfully tracking Yu Kaixia with their eyes, as the three distinguished members of the judicial panel made their exit from the high bench. During this agonizing recess, every single person in the room felt their heart race, completely terrified of what the imminent final verdict would be. There was only one solitary exception to this suffocating anxiety, and that was you. Meanwhile, Li Xuechen's palms were completely slick with nervous sweat. This was her absolute first time actively participating in high-stakes litigation, and she had just witnessed you command the entire courtroom arena with your lethal debate skills. Yet even though the legal warfare had temporarily ceased, the ultimate final judgment was still hanging in the balance, leaving her nerves completely shredded. Driven by sheer curiosity, Li Xuezhen looked toward you and whispered, Senior Attorney Su, how are you not sweating bullets over the impending final verdict? This is a massive high-profile case, and it's even being broadcast live across the entire internet. The public backlash is completely insane. Completely insane. Are you seriously not worried in the slightest? A confident, relaxed smirk played on the edges of your lips. There's absolutely zero reason to stress. The crimes that deserve punishment will be dealt with, and the innocent will be completely vindicated by the law. Just take a deep breath and relax. The ones who should be losing their minds right now definitely aren't us. Just take a good look at Attorney Li over there. As the elite legal shield for the Nandu Banking Corporation, he's the one under a mountain of pressure right now. Li Xuechen glanced over toward the defense table and noticed Li Mo, staring directly at the two of you, prompting her to whisper, Senior Attorney Su, look out, Attorney Li is actively burning a hole through us with his eyes. You lifted your gaze and instantly locked eyes with him, observing that Li Mo was glaring at you with a mixture of raw fury, suffocating anxiety, and an entire toxic cocktail of negative emotions, all twisted together into a single venomous stare. You simply offered him a calm, mocking smile. Don't mind him. Attorney Li is just doing some high-intensity eye exercises to calm his nerves. Meanwhile, behind locked doors in the private chambers, the three members of the judicial panel, specifically the Chief Justice, and her two associate judges were deep in intense critical deliberations to determine the final ruling, before executing the final high-stakes consultation with the two panel judges to finalize the ultimate verdict. When it comes to the complex legal framework of this specific case, do either of you have any definitive conclusions to share? Chief Justice Yu Kaixia directed her sharp gaze toward the two associate judges. One of the panelists cleared his throat and immediately voiced his concern regarding the plaintiff's aggressive push to have Wang Li fully acquitted, while their counsel delivered an absolutely masterful statutory analysis in the arena and backed it up with an ironclad evidentiary trail. We cannot ignore that the initial court handed down a staggering 20-year prison sentence, which the appellate court then fully upheld. If our final supreme ruling completely flips that precedent and creates such a massive discrepancy, won't it trigger an absolute storm of public and institutional controversy? The second associate judge nodded in silent agreement, clearly sharing that tactical concern. Yu Kaixia's brow furrowed slightly as she exuded absolute judicial authority. Our final adjudication must be anchored solely to the pure mechanics of the statutory code. We are under zero obligation to coddle the flawed findings of the lower courts. Understood. Then we shall proceed strictly according to the Chief Justice's definitive legal analysis. With the panel aligned, the three judges finalized their consensus. leaving the ultimate delivery of the historic verdict entirely in Yu Kaixia's hands. Inside the courtroom, the agonizing 30-minute countdown quickly evaporated. Every single netizen and spectator tracking this viral legal warfare was on the absolute edge of their seat, desperately waiting for the hammer of justice to fall. As Chief Justice Yu Kaixia and her 2 associate panel members marched back onto the high judicial platform, the court clerk's voice boomed, "All rise." Instantly, every single person inside the packed tribunal snapped to attention. Limo stared fixatedly at the high bench, his heart hammering against his ribs in sheer terror. When it came to the actual outcome of this brutal legal crusade, the elite corporate lawyer realized he now possessed absolutely zero leverage or certainty. He was utterly powerless, reduced to waiting for Yu Chaixia to speak the words that would decide his fate. Out of the corner of his eye, he instinctively glanced over at the plaintiff's table, only to find Yu looking completely relaxed as if you already owned the room, causing his stomach to instantly drop into a bottomless pit of despair. Chief Justice Yu Kaixia unrolled the official certified judgment papers, and under the breathless gaze of a nationwide audience, her clear icy voice echoed through the hall. This tribunal, acting as a supreme authority of the Nandu Higher People's Court, hereby delivers its final, non-appealable verdict in the matter concerning the appellant Wang Li and the respondent, the Nandu Banking Corporation. This High Court confirms it holds absolute statutory jurisdiction over all related proceedings, with the final ruling dictated exclusively by our sacred National Criminal Code, pursuant to the strict statutory codification of our nation's penal law. The deliberate utilization of physical violence, coercion, or mortal threats to plunder corporate assets from another individual constitutes the absolute baseline requirement to substantiate a charge of robbery. The original prosecution's underlying narrative claiming that the appellant Wang Li acted as a literal co-conspirator in a bank heist fails to meet the explicit threshold demanded by the statutory language. Therefore, Wang Li did not commit the underlying criminal acts required to fulfill a charge of robbery. However, given that Wang Li was fully aware the obtained funds stemmed from illicit activity, yet stubbornly chose to utilize them to settle her father's critical medical expenses, she remains implicated in unjust enrichment and the illicit diversion of funds, specifically regarding the concealment of criminal proceeds. Nevertheless, taking into account the highly mitigating, desperate circumstances and the extreme urgency of the situation, along with the fact that Wang Li had temporarily lost her rational capacity to control her actions, this tribunal hereby sentences Wang Li to exactly 6 months of imprisonment, fully suspended for a period of 1 year, conditioned upon the complete restitution of the illicitly acquired funds. Furthermore, addressing the plaintiff's secondary claims regarding the Nandu Banking Corporation's massive institutional liability, the court finds that Nandu Bank's gross negligence directly contributed to this crisis. Hence, we formally order Nandu Bank to issue a public apology to Wang Li. All other civil damages requested by the plaintiff are hereby dismissed. Finally, regarding the counterclaims entered onto the record by the defense, they are entirely unequivocally rejected in their entirety. This tribunal's decree stands as the final absolute judicial verdict. Pursuant to the strict mandates of our National Civil Procedure Law, this high bench will, within exactly 10 days of today's adjournment, serve the formalized written judgment dossiers to all principal parties. Bang! The heavy wooden gavel violently struck the sound block, with the final authoritative echo of Chief Justice Yu Kaixia's voice fading into the room. This epic high-stakes supreme legal showdown officially reached its historic conclusion. The absolute microsecond the final words of the supreme verdict vibrated through the air, Limo's remaining corporate composure completely shattered, leaving him utterly ruined. They lost. The multi-billion-dollar titan Nandu Bank had actually lost. And to make matters worse, they had been absolutely ruthlessly annihilated on the record. Not only did the high bench officially strip away the terrifying bank robbery conviction from Wang Li, completely destroying the flawed precedents established by the initial trial and the appellate court, but they also reduced her active sentence to a mere 6 months. And that wasn't even the ultimate crushing blow for the defense. The court had granted her a full conditional probation. What exactly did this suspended probation translate to in reality? It meant that under the mechanics of the penal code, Wang Li didn't have to spend a single solitary second behind actual prison bars, as long as she kept her nose clean, stayed completely out of trouble, and committed 0 legal infractions during the probationary period. This criminal sentence was practically non-existent. The very instant the official judicial decree was sealed on the record, Limo, the star corporate weapon of the Nandu Bank legal division, felt his entire sanity unraveling into absolute madness. Meanwhile, deep inside the luxurious corporate headquarters of the Nandu Bank legal department, General Counsel Xu Jiqiang was hyperfixated on the live broadcast of the trial. The exact moment this devastating final verdict echoed through his speakers, he froze entirely, staring blankly at the screen in absolute numb shock. Letting out a heavy, deeply defeated sigh, he slumped back into his chair. Throughout the entire duration of watching this viral courtroom warfare play out, A suffocating, grim premonition had already been clawing at his gut, that this high-stakes trial was bound to end in a crushing defeat. However, what he absolutely never could have anticipated was that the finalized verdict would turn into such a brutal, catastrophic massacre. It was bad enough that Wang Li walked away with a fully suspended probation, but forcing a financial titan like Nandu Bank to issue a public apology to her. Who on earth could possibly survive that kind of reputational damage? Right now, Xu Jiqiang was completely at a loss, his mind spinning with sheer panic. If he had dared to break the news of this disastrous courtroom failure to Wang Wu, he could already vividly picture the imminent fallout, an immediate humiliating scene of himself, clutching a cardboard box of personal belongings and getting kicked out the front door. Meanwhile, inside the luxurious Nandu Bank presidential office, Wang Wu stared fixedly at the live broadcast of the legal proceedings, and the moment the screen cut to black following the final adjournment, he completely lost his mind with pure unadulterated rage. Storming down the corridor, he violently kicked open the door to the legal department. Xu Jiqiang, what happened to those ironclad guarantees you gave me? Didn't you promise me that Nandu Bank was mathematically guaranteed to crush this case and secure a flawless victory in the court of public opinion? Is this absolute disaster what you consider a victory? Earlier, Wang Wu had been sitting right there in the legal office with Xu Jiqiang tracking the live stream, until the boiling frustration forced him to storm out. Yet the moment he retreated to his executive suite, he couldn't resist secretly logging back in to watch the rest of the courtroom massacre. This viral live stream wasn't merely about winning or losing a single litigation. It directly held the entire brand equity and public trust of Nandu Bank hostage. Nandu Bank was ultimately just a regional, localized financial institution, and if its corporate reputation took a fatal hit, the resulting bleed of capital and panic withdrawals would be absolutely catastrophic. Having witnessed the brutal tactical demolition from the opening statements to the final gavel, Wang Wu's emotional state could only be described as a wild, agonizing roller coaster of despair. Actually, scratch that, there was zero rise, just a straight vertical drop into absolute oblivion. He didn't catch a single break. He was just getting thoroughly clowned on line after line. The exact microsecond the final verdict was sealed on the record, Wang Wu completely snapped, losing all corporate composure, as he charged straight into the legal department to ruthlessly interrogate Xu Jiqiang, his supposedly elite chief legal officer. Xu Jiqiang felt an intense wave of bitter grievance washing over his soul. How could any rational person have predicted that a small-time attorney specializing in petty divorce, consultations, and marital disputes could unleash such a terrifyingly aggressive high-tier strategy in a criminal court? The man didn't just litigate, he walked into that arena and initiated a total bloodbath. To make matters worse, they had the extreme misfortune of drawing Yu Kaixia, a legendary iron-fisted veteran Chief Justice, who anchored her final decree in such airtight, flawless legal rationale that filing a successful appeal was now mathematically and procedurally impossible. President Wang, this entire catastrophe was undeniably a massive blind spot on our legal team's part. However, while we technically suffered a tactical defeat in the arena, we haven't completely weaponized our final options just yet. The court's penalty is merely a basic surface-level public apology. As long as we spin the narrative and seize absolute control of the media storm, then at the end of the day, Nandu Bank will still emerge as the ultimate victor. Wang Wu's eyes instantly narrowed into venomous slits, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. Spin the narrative, spin my absolute ass. Our entire institution was just legally branded as negligent and ordered to apologize on a live stream. And you're still sitting here babbling about public relations. Do you take me for a complete and utter idiot? We just got utterly demolished on the record, so how exactly do you plan to spin this disaster? Xu Jiqiang's face instantly twisted into a mask of pure awkward panic. The truth was he was completely talking out of his ass. He had absolutely zero clue how to salvage their ruined reputation in the court of public opinion. That desperate pitch was purely a frantic attempt to keep Wang Wu from tearing him apart on the spot. Wang Wu saw right through the pathetic bluff, dismissively waving his hand with a cold sneer. You better start racking your brain for a real solution. If this humiliating courtroom loss causes our client base to evaporate and inflicts fatal, irreversible damage on our bank's credibility, you can pack your things because your career as chief legal officer is officially over. Xu Jiqiang opened his mouth desperately, trying to scramble for another excuse. But Wang Wu didn't give him a single second to breathe, storming out of the legal department while slamming the door behind him. Xu Jiqiang slumped into his desk chair, his expression turning incredibly dark and grim. Their corporate defense strategy was supposed to be completely airtight and flawless. Who on earth could have predicted that a random small-time player would hijack the trial? A supposedly basic matrimonial consultant who turns out to be an absolute god-tier monster in criminal litigation. Meanwhile, back inside the courtroom, the moment the final adjournment was officially declared, Chief Justice Yu Kaixia and the two associate panel members stood up from the bench and exited the active legal arena. Because Wang Li wasn't granted a literal absolute acquittal on the spot, and was still technically held liable for unjust enrichment and the illicit transfer of tainted funds. The standard penal protocol still had to be rigidly executed, despite her sentence being fully suspended. Thus, she was systematically escorted out of the room by the judicial bailiffs. Li Shuozhen turned to face you, her eyes sparkling with pure unadulterated excitement, as she practically vibrated in place. Senior Attorney Su. We actually did it. We won. We completely crushed this litigation. Sure, Wang Li technically received a conviction, but it's only for a microscopic 6 months and it's fully suspended. When you stack that up against the terrifying life-crushing 20-year prison sentence, handed down by the initial court and upheld by the appellate judges, this definitive supreme verdict is an absolute monumental landslide victory for our firm. You're a literal legend, Senior Attorney Su. Li Shuozhen happily bounced on her heels, her entire body trembling from the sheer adrenaline rush of the win. You cast a calm glance over at your thoroughly ecstatic, starry-eyed intern, the corner of your mouth curving into a confident, knowing smirk. A subtle, incredibly sinister smirk crept onto the edge of his lips. Didn't I lay it out for you from the very beginning that this legal battle was a guaranteed absolute win? Chief Justice Yu Kaitia's flawless verdict fell perfectly in line with your master calculations. Had any run-of-the-mill attorney handled this case, even if they couldn't secure such a miraculously light sentence, the appellate court never should have blindly rubber-stamped the initial court's ruling. The real issue was that the initial lawyer Wang Zhejiang hired was completely incompetent. And though they brought out a supposed golden-tongued elite for the second trial, it was all just flashy, superficial hype. Throughout this intense legal warfare, there were actually several deeper institutional issues that you deliberately chose not to drag into the open. Because the absolute make-or-break axis of this entire litigation hinged on a single question. Could the state legitimately brand Wang Li with the ultimate label of a bank robber? That was the supreme battlefield. The moment you successfully shattered that specific criminal categorization, the grand offensive launched by the Nandu Banking Corporation, and the state prosecution completely evaporated into thin air. The other wildcard was the psychological profile of the presiding judge. Wang Li's predicament was incredibly delicate, especially with back-to-back 20-year prison sentences looming over her head from the lower courts. Usually a Supreme Tribunal cautiously defers to prior judgments to protect institutional pride. But fortunately, Chief Justice Yu Kaixia is a legendary iron-fisted veteran of the judiciary, who fiercely demands absolute textual fidelity to the law. With a purist like her on the bench, this historic triumph was never an accident, it was inevitable. Alright, let's keep our composure and not get carried away. Hurry up and pack up our case files. We still have a mountain of post-trial administrative procedures to execute. Our schedule is far from empty. Understood, Senior Attorney Su. Li Shuozhen desperately suppressed her exploding excitement, diligently organizing the legal dockets before falling into step right behind you, as you both prepared to make a triumphant exit from the courtroom arena. On the other side of the aisle, Limo's eyes were hyperfixated on you, tracking your every move. His gaze a toxic cocktail of absolute soul-crushing despair, blistering resentment and petty jealousy, an incredibly twisted emotional wreck. As you passed their table, Li Shuozhen leaned in and whispered under her breath, "Hey, Senior Attorney Su, that Nandu Bank Shield Attorney Li looks like he wants to literally murder you." You simply let out a relaxed, mocking chuckle. He's probably just suffering from extreme eye strain after all those intense exercises. Ignore him, we have places to be. Copy that, Senior Attorney Su. Honestly, that dry humor of yours is absolute gold. Limo, standing mere inches away, caught every single word of that banter. That particular dark comedy routine is honestly pretty amusing. The moment Limo overheard this exact exchange, and the sheer boiling rage almost made him cough up blood right then and there. Getting utterly destroyed in court was already bad enough. But when the two of you casually strolled right past him, could you at least have had the decency to actually whisper? You were standing a mere 2 inches away and talking that loudly. Did you seriously think he was completely deaf? But there was absolutely nothing he could do. A loss was a loss. And throwing a pathetic tantrum in the courtroom arena wouldn't change a damn thing. The historic final verdict was already permanently sealed on the record. After mechanically packing up his utterly defeated defense materials, Limo dragged his feet, following like a ghost as you exited the courthouse. Outside the majestic Supreme Court building, a massive horde of reporters was already losing their minds, desperate to secure an exclusive scoop. Some were frantically calling their newsrooms on the spot to dictate the front page breaking news. Already cooking up the most insane clickbait headlines imaginable. Shocker. The Wang Lai case faces a monumental landslide reversal. Nandu Bank absolutely destroyed. The arrogant titan Nandu Bank meets its ultimate doom. Justice triumphs in a brutal courtroom showdown. Nandu Bank experiences the ruthless hammer of justice. They were aggressively leaning into every single sensationalized buzzword possible. The wilder and more eye-catching the better, the exact moment you stepped into the sunlight. Dozens of media outlets swarmed you like a pack of starving wolves, shoving heavy video cameras and recording mics directly into your face. Attorney Su. Looking back at this historic battle, what is your personal commentary on the mind-blowing legal strategy you displayed inside that arena? What absolute stroke of genius led you to demand that a financial institution legally prove that their own money belongs to them? 另一个记者扯住嗓子高喊 Attorney Sue, our background research indicates that your firm strictly specializes in low-level matrimonial and divorce consultations. How on earth did you execute such a flawless, high-tier performance in a major criminal trial? Realizing this was the absolute ultimate opportunity to secure massive free publicity for the firm, you calmly faced the blinding camera flashes and the sea of aggressive reporters, smoothly adjusting your pristine suit jacket with supreme confidence. While it's true our firm is widely recognized as a premier matrimonial consultation practice, our legal elite actually possess mastery across high-stakes criminal defense, complex civil litigation, and corporate economic disputes. Our operational scope covers the entire statutory spectrum, which is exactly why we were able to completely dismantle the opposition today. If any of you ever find yourselves needing to dominate in a court of law, your absolute first choice should be none other than Baijin Law Firm. You flashed a blinding high-wattage smile that exuded absolute undeniable sincerity. Having successfully plugged your business to millions of viewers, you swiftly guided a starstruck Li Shuizhen through the crowd, making a clean break from the chaos. This left the miserable legal representatives of Nandu Bank standing entirely exposed, and the relentless media wolves instantly spun around to lock onto their next target. The entire courtroom was instantly drained, leaving absolutely no one behind except the desperate staff of Nandu Bank. Right at this critical juncture, a wave of aggressive media reporters, sensing a fresh, hyper-juicy angle to exploit for absolute maximum clout. The aggressive press pack aggressively shoved their lenses straight into Limo's face. Attorney Lee, let's talk about facts. How does it feel to exhibit supreme swaggering confidence before the opening statement, only to be completely and utterly demolished by a literal no-name matrimonial firm? Furthermore, when you boldly guaranteed that Nandu Bank's victory was a mathematical certainty, and told the entire public not to worry, did you secretly know all along that Nandu Bank was destined to crash and burn? Answer us, Attorney Lee. Are you actually working behind the scenes with the plaintiff's counsels? Limo's forehead instantly broke into violent cold sweat, his mouth twitching uncontrollably as his mind completely broke. These media vultures were straight up aiming for his jugular. This wasn't just standard reporting, it was a total unhinged hit job. What the hell are you trying to imply right now? Are you seriously branding me a corporate mole? Limo was on the absolute brink of a massive psychological breakdown. The surrounding journalists, hearing such an explosive and controversial question, instantly locked eyes as their predatory media instincts kicked into overdrive. To put it bluntly, their entire strategy was to bait him into a career-ending trap. A wave of completely shameless, clout-chasing tabloid bottom-feeders immediately swarmed forward, trapping a defenseless Limo in a suffocating wall of mics. The contrast was absolutely brutal. When Limo first strutted into this courthouse, he looked like an invincible corporate god. Now he was exiting as a completely defeated loser, getting publicly butchered by the press. The absolute microsecond the historic Wang Li trial reached its definitive conclusion, every mainstream news outlet and social media platform erupted into a frenzy of coverage. Every single viral headline hyperfixated on the ultimate punchline delivered at Nandu Bank's expense. How does a bank legally prove that a bank's money actually belongs to the bank? This single lethal quote exploded across the internet like wildfire, breaking every algorithm. Consequently, Nandu Bank's corporate reputation and public trust suffered a catastrophic multi-million-dollar downfall. And right when things couldn't possibly get any worse for the financial titan, a brilliantly toxic side-by-side edit video began trending worldwide. The clip kicks off with a smug, oozing with swagger Limo bragging to the press. As for our actual probability of winning this litigation, there is absolutely zero reason to worry. I am entirely confident that the public already knows how this will end. Then the video hard cuts to the final frame of Limo slumped over his defeated back to the camera. The viral caption read, "The lonely back of a hidden legend." The voiceover mockingly chimed in, plot twist from the very opening statements. Nandu Bank's elite shield Attorney Lee already possessed the divine foresight that his multi-billion-dollar corporate client was destined to be utterly annihilated. Why? Because his dedication to absolute justice is truly unmatched. He single-handedly infiltrated the toxic underbelly of Nandu Bank. Why exactly? Because his unyielding spirit is absolutely legendary. Single-handedly infiltrating the heavily fortified inner sanctum of Nandu Bank, solely to orchestrate a legendary, flawless victory for a tiny matrimonial law firm. He single-handedly nuked Nandu Bank's entire corporate reputation from orbit. What do you even call a mastermind like this? This is literally a 10-year undercover operation executed perfectly in one single move. The moment this absolute masterpiece of a video dropped, the algorithm went into hyperdrive, pushing it to millions of feeds instantly. Countless netizens flocked to the comment section to ruthlessly clown on the defense. Bro, this is my first time witnessing a lawyer actively sabotaging his own billionaire client from within. This god tier play is absolutely legendary 666. LMAO, the mental gymnastics in this video are out of this world. No way a completely incompetent corporate sellout just got whitewashed into a hero. I'm dead, this is gold. But hey, that's just the chaotic nature of the internet for you. Even the smart netizens, who saw right through the obvious joke, couldn't resist jumping into the comment section to add fuel to the fire. Ha 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 ha, whoever cooked up this voiceover deserves a raise, this is pure genius. Infiltrating the enemy ranks for a whole decade just to throw the biggest trial of the century. When the Shadow Warrior returns, ha ha ha, I can't even type this with a straight face anymore. Next contestant in the comment section, please step up. Meanwhile, inside Nandu Bank's emergency executive boardroom meeting, Wang Wu aggressively slammed his tablet displaying the viral video onto the desk, his eyes burning with absolute murderous rage. What the hell is the meaning of this? You live off our corporate salary, you drain our institutional resources. And what exactly does this bank pay you for, you useless clown? I am issuing an official company-wide reprimand right now, due to Li Mo's monumental, catastrophic failure which has inflicted irreversible damage on our brand identity. He is hereby terminated, effective immediately. Li Mo, pack up your pathetic desk and get the hell out of my building. Li Mo stared at the trending video, his mind utterly blank and overflowing with confusion. I seriously became a global meme because of this brain rot script. Fine. If you're firing me, I'm out. Like, I can't easily secure an elite position at another top-tier firm. Without missing a beat, he threw his belongings into a box and walked away from Nandu Bank forever. As for the Nandu Banking Corporation itself, because the massive fallout from that viral courtroom livestream had caused a devastating, unprecedented public relations nightmare, their corporate credibility plummeted straight into a bottomless abyss. To stop the bleeding, the bank was forced to issue a humiliating global apology to all shareholders, while simultaneously compensating every single high-net-worth client who had lost their valuable personal assets in the original security breach, paying out massive damages in a desperate attempt to salvage whatever ruined reputation they had left. Yet Nandu Bank's frantic, desperate damage control measures offered nothing more than a minor bandage on a severed artery in the court of public opinion. Refusing to take the loss, Nandu Bank began throwing millions of dollars into a massive corporate bribery campaign to buy out mainstream media outlets, desperately trying to hijack the narrative and seize the moral high ground online. Unfortunately for them, the netizens absolutely refused to buy into the corporate propaganda. They poured an astronomical fortune into burying hot search keywords and erasing negative hashtags, doing everything in their power to suppress the viral backlash. But even after burning through a staggering, eye-watering amount of capital, they only managed to secure a minor temporary reduction in the viral backlash. But then, out of nowhere, legendary legal commentator Luo Daxiang struck, dropping an explosive video explicitly titled, "The most flawless, jaw-dropping courtroom defense of the entire year." The entire analysis focused squarely on the groundbreaking Wang Li trial. As a premier top-tier legal authority in the digital space, Luo Daxiang possessed massive narrative-shifting influence across the internet. Every single piece of content he released instantly generated terrifyingly high view count and millions of shares. The very second this specific analysis went live, all the corporate media manipulation Nandu Bank had paid so heavily for was completely drowned out and silenced into absolute irrelevance. In the clip Luo Daxiang masterfully dissected every single layer of statutory doctrine and legal warfare displayed on the battlefield. He explicitly taught his audience precisely why a defense attorney had to attack the state's case from that specific tactical angle in order to secure victory, brilliantly charting the absolute turning points of the entire litigation, even though the footage used in the breakdown had censored and blurred out Nandu Bank's corporate logo. Literally, every single viewer with a brain knew exactly which bank was getting publicly executed. Naturally, the comment section was overflowing with helpful netizens dropping unblurred names. It's Nandu Bank, guys. As a result, the multi-billion-dollar institution suffered another devastating multi-million-dollar blow to its brand value. Yet, in stark contrast to the absolute chaos erupting across the internet, the atmosphere inside the Baijun law firm remained completely peaceful and quiet. For the first 48 hours following your monumental courtroom victory, a massive wave of prospective clients flooded the office seeking legal advice. Unfortunately, it was all flash and no substance, pure bark and zero bite. Most of them were just opportunistic freeloaders trying to score a freebie, shamelessly probing for expert legal advice without spending a dime. The absolute second they found out your consultation required a retainer, they bolted out the door. Not a single real case materialized. On top of that, a bunch of dramatic women looking to vent about their personal lives explicitly showed up just to chat with you about their crumbling marriages. You smoothly offloaded every single one of them onto your intern Li Shuozhen. After all, women relate best to women, right? Delegating the standard marital consultations to Li Shuozhen was a completely logical, flawless management play. Oddly enough, the moment these clients realized They were being handled by Li Shuizhen. For some bizarre reason, their conversations wrapped up in under 15 minutes before they hurriedly exited the firm. By the end of the week, as the viral media hype finally began to cool down, the daily influx of random walk-ins dwindled significantly, with your schedule finally opening up. You dropped nearly $5,000 to hire a professional renovation crew for a 2-day job, giving the entire office a much-needed high-end aesthetic makeover. At the very least, from a purely visual standpoint, the firm now looked infinitely more prestigious and corporate than before. You then dropped another cool $5,000 to upgrade the office setup with sleek high-end desk equipment. All in all, the workplace finally looked like a highly prestigious, legitimate practice. Yeah, this is a massive upgrade from that old junk. You nodded in absolute satisfaction. Expand the empire, dominate the market. Consider this the official first step toward total supremacy. Unfortunately, the office remained completely empty and quiet, with zero high-paying corporate cases walking through the door. It looks like relying solely on viral internet hype doesn't instantly yield high-paying retainers. Even those flashy media articles weren't converting into paying clients. During this lull, you actually received an avalanche of headhunting offers from rival powerhouse firms begging you to head their high-stakes criminal defense divisions. But why on earth would a mastermind grind away as a corporate slave for someone else, when you could run the entire empire yourself as the ultimate capitalist kingpin? You ruthlessly rejected every single one of them. Exactly 10 days after your legendary courtroom victory around 1:30 p.m., the blazing afternoon sun was high in the sky, making the weather outside incredibly humid and sweltering. You were casually sipping premium tea under the icy draft of the AC, while a highly focused Li Shuizhen was frantically raiding the comment section of Professor Luo's viral analysis video to plug your firm for maximum brand exposure. Her marketing strategy was remarkably raw and straightforward, completely stripped of any flashy gimmicks or unnecessary fluff. She simply spammed the comment sections. PSA, the god-tier attorney who orchestrated this historic victory is based right here at Nandu's Baijun law firm. Unrivaled legal prowess, absolute masters of civil disputes and high-stakes criminal defense. If you want to completely crush your opposition in court, lock in with Baijun law firm immediately. After 30 continuous minutes of this, Li Shuizhen's fingers went completely numb from the endless copy-pasting, prompting her to look up and ask, Senior Attorney Su, is spamming these forums actually going to bring in premium clients? It feels like our promotional comments are just getting buried under the algorithm, and our corporate inbox is completely dead. Of course it works. A single drop in the ocean might not make a splash, which is exactly why this operation requires your absolute relentless hustle. Besides, don't you want to dive straight into high-stakes litigation, accumulate invaluable elite courtroom experience, and pass your certification to become a legendary powerhouse attorney? You kept a completely straight face, masterfully feeding this ambitious high-energy intern an absolute masterclass in corporate motivation. All right, let's get back to the grind. On it, Senior Attorney Su. Li Huizhen, fully re-energized by that massive wave of hype, instantly went back to relentlessly spamming the forums. You glanced down at the date on your phone. Wang Li should have completely wrapped up her standard judicial release protocols by today. You had explicitly scheduled a final meeting with Wang Zizhong today to settle the firm's legal retainer, and calculating the exact time frame they should be arriving any minute now. Sure enough, right as that thought crossed your mind, Wang Zizhong and his wife, carefully supported on both sides by Wang Li, slowly made their way toward the grand entrance of Baijun law firm. They literally could not wipe the ecstatic weeping smiles off their faces. Their only son's devastating, life-crushing 20-year prison sentence had been miraculously slashed down to a fully suspended probation. To this elderly couple, you weren't just a lawyer, you were an absolute God-sent savior. If it hadn't been for your legendary intervention, considering their fragile advanced age, they would have taken their very last breaths, long before their beloved son ever tasted absolute freedom again. They would have departed this world carrying an eternity of profound, unbearable grief. It was no exaggeration to say you had single-handedly granted them a second lease on life. Wang Li's face was likewise practically splitting from a massive jubilant grin. Through the brutal gauntlet of this monumental legal battle, she had witnessed firsthand your absolute god-tier dominance inside the courtroom arena. If you hadn't taken her desperate case, by the time she finally dragged herself out of a maximum security prison, she would have been completely and utterly alienated from modern civilization. Her heart was overflowing with pure unadulterated reverence towards you. Guiding the elderly couple forward, she crossed the threshold into the sleek, updated firm. Wang Zizhong suddenly pulled away from Wang Li's supportive grip, practically rushing into the main office with an energetic stride. Wang Li, caught off guard, had to double her pace just to keep up. As they settled into the firm's brand new, luxurious leather couches, you smoothly grabbed 3 chilled bottles of premium mineral water and placed them directly in front of the overwhelmed Wang family. while simultaneously sliding the official judicial decree across the glass table to Wang Li. This is the definitive supreme verdict issued directly from the High Tribunal. It was temporarily registered in my custody post-trial, so make sure to file it away safely and don't misplace it. Wang Li reverently, almost religiously took the legal document and carefully folded it over multiple times, smoothing out every crease until it was roughly the size of a standard passport, before sliding it deep into her inner pocket. She then reached into her handbag and pulled out a heavy jet black security pouch. Senior Attorney Su, according to the binding terms of our initial retainer agreement. The outstanding legal service balance totals exactly 100,000 yuan. However, after discussing it intensely with my father, we both know that if you hadn't stepped up to champion my cause, I would be rotting behind iron bars for at least the next 10 to 15 years. But against all odds, you secured a miracle probation and reduced my prison time down to a mere matter of months. So inside this bag is exactly 120,000 yuan. I know this extra amount still doesn't fully match your worth, but please accept it as a sincere token of our eternal gratitude. You absolutely must take it. Wang Li forcefully pressed the heavy security pouch straight into your arms. Wang Zizhong and Zhang Chuifen, terrified that you might politely decline, immediately chimed in from the side Senior Attorney Su. Our family's salvation is entirely thanks to your brilliant mind. Honestly, compared to the astronomical retainers those other elite lawyers demand, your initial rate was already incredibly generous. Please do not refuse this. You saved our entire household from absolute ruin, so this small bonus is truly the absolute least we can do. Seeing their sincerity, you didn't bother putting up a polite fake refusal. For a massive high-stakes case like this during the second trial, that fraud golden-tongued corporate lawyer charged a staggering 188,000 won. Yet you literally saved Wang Li from a brutal long-term prison sentence, meaning accepting this extra cash was entirely justified. An elite attorney's premium fee is strictly determined by the sheer complexity and difficulty of the battle. The exact moment she watched you smoothly accept the bonus, Wang Li let out a massive profound sigh of pure relief, suddenly as if a sharp memory abruptly flashed through her mind. She leaned forward and asked Senior Attorney Su, "Are you highly experienced in high-stakes matrimonial law as well?" You raised an eyebrow, locking eyes with Wang Li. "Why are you already looking to dive into a brutal divorce battle?" Your analytical gaze met hers with a hint of amusement. This girl literally just walked out of a criminal prison on probation, and now she's already trying to spark a chaotic civil lawsuit just to spice things up. Wang Li shifted her weight on the premium leather couch, making the pristine brand new cushion slightly squeak beneath her. Faced with your sharp question, Wang Li quickly shook her head. "Oh no, definitely not me, Senior Attorney Su. I'm still technically on a strict judicial probation period. So getting entangled in any personal litigation would just invite unnecessary heat. The real reason I'm asking is because I want to officially refer a massive high-end divorce case to you. It involves my absolute closest childhood best friend, who desperately needs to launch a legal offensive. If you specialize in crushing opposition in divorce court, I can immediately lock my childhood friend into a consultation with you." You had to admit Wang Li's loyalty was remarkably genuine. The very second a legal dispute arose in her circle, her absolute first thought was to secure you. This was a high-value client worth keeping. Just a few days ago, right after dominating the ultimate Supreme Courtroom battle, you had aggressively plugged your firm to the massive horde of media reporters. And it looked like that marketing campaign was finally paying off beautifully. And yet, we still hadn't landed a single paying client because the media only cares about explosive clickbait headlines, and the netizens only care about pure unadulterated courtroom drama. Expecting to seamlessly convert that kind of viral publicity into actual high-paying cases was honestly just wishful thinking on your part. You never would have guessed that Wang Li's arrival today would actually drop an unexpected golden opportunity right into your lap. Of course, we handle that. Our firm's absolute flagship specialization is high-stakes divorce litigation. You should already be well aware of that, right? Now, Wang Li, a burly 30-year-old mountain of a man, awkwardly scratched the back of his neck. "Man, when Senior Attorney Su defended me during my trial, your performance left such an unbelievably deep impression on me. I naturally just assumed, subconsciously, that you were an elite, hyper-specialized criminal defense attorney. You're not wrong. I am indeed a master of high-tier criminal defense. But my expertise in civil litigation and matrimonial warfare is equally elite. You didn't show even a shred of fake modesty. You simply laid out the absolute undeniable facts, with your comprehensive god-tier understanding of every single facet across the legal spectrum. Making a bold claim like that wasn't an exaggeration at all. That is absolutely perfect, with a legendary powerhouse like Senior Attorney Su taking the reins. My childhood best friend's messy divorce battle actually stands a massive fighting chance." Wang Li's face flushed with pure excitement laced with a strange hint of intense euphoria. He seemed almost pathologically thrilled at the mere prospect of his childhood buddy finally breaking free from his marriage. "Care to fill me in on the details of your friend's situation?" I can't help but notice that you seem exceptionally ecstatic about him executing this divorce. Are we talking about an absolute escape from a living hell here? The moment you framed his childhood friend's impending divorce as a desperate escape from total damnation. Wang Li's expression instantly twisted into pure unadulterated rage, looking far more furious than when he was recounting his own previous legal nightmare. If he can successfully pull off this divorce, calling it an escape from a living hell doesn't even do it justice. It would literally be a miraculous ascension straight into paradise. Wang Li violently slammed his heavy fist directly into the couch. The pristine leather instantly buckled, leaving a deep, fist-sized crater, sinking about 2 centimeters into the fresh cushion. Oh man, I'm incredibly sorry about that, Senior Attorney Sue. I completely lost my composure for a second there. It's just that my childhood friend's toxic excuse of a wife, honestly, I don't even know how to put it into human words. She is just completely, utterly unhinged. You know those ridiculously toxic, psychotic individuals you read about online? Yeah, she is somehow 10 times worse than that. Senior Attorney Sue, can you even fathom that kind of insanity? That's exactly why I'm completely losing my mind here. I just absolutely cannot stand seeing my closest bro get treated like absolute trash. Deep within Wang Li's eyes, a profound wave of genuine heartbreak began to surface. Yes, it was sheer, unadulterated heartbreak. The deep, agonizing pain of watching his brother rot in a toxic relationship. Meanwhile, glancing down at your brand new leather couch, you were experiencing a pretty profound wave of heartbreak yourself. I literally just bought that piece of furniture for a cool $800. Alright, let's hold off on the righteous fury for just a second. Why don't you start by breaking down the exact details of your friend's predicament? You calmly adjusted the lapels of your tailored suit jacket, then signaled for Li Shuizhen to grab her legal pad and take precise notes. Wang Li nodded heavily, taking a deep breath, before laying out the absolute disaster of his situation. My childhood best friend is the definition of a textbook nice guy. He's a dedicated software engineer, pulling in a solid 20,000 yuan a month. Plus his family hit the jackpot as Nandu locals during the municipal rezoning. They own 3 prime real estate properties outright. One is occupied by his elderly parents. The second is where he and his toxic wife currently live. And the third property was originally bringing in steady rental income. However, his wife claimed one of her colleagues desperately needed a place to rent, so he agreed to take it off the market, with the intent of doing her coworker a favor. But out of absolutely nowhere, his wife secretly transferred the keys and let her own slacker brother move in entirely rent-free. See, his wife comes from a small out-of-town village, and her family is completely desperately broke. She's right around my friend's age, roughly 30 years old, standing at 162 centimeters and weighing about 55 kilograms. She works a dead-end job making a pathetic 3,000 yuan a month, and she's burdened with 2 younger leech brothers below her. Her parents have absolutely zero social security or retirement savings, relying purely on random, unstable odd jobs to scrape together a miserable 2,000 yuan a month. As for her 2 deadbeat younger brothers, one dropped out back in middle school and just mooches off his parents all day, while the other graduated from college a year ago and hasn't worked a single day in his life. My friend is the ultimate gold standard beta male provider. He hands over 100% of his hard-earned paycheck to her every single month. His wife burns through her own salary instantly, and then proceeds to completely drain every single cent of my friend's money too. It's gotten so insanely bad that my boy literally has to buy his cigarettes 1 single stick at a time, counting pennies just to afford 1 smoke a day. The more you listen to this absolute horror story, the more unhinged it sounded. Hold on, what on earth is he even getting out of this marriage? Even Li Shuizhen, who was furiously taking notes, couldn't help but scowl in absolute disgust as she listened to Wang Li's jaw-dropping explanation. Speaking strictly from a woman's perspective, she found this psychotic behavior completely unacceptable. This wasn't a sacred matrimony at all. This was treating a human being like a personal infinite cash machine, the kind of obedient ATM that never complains about being abused. Has this poor guy completely lost his mind to let himself be scammed like this? Deep within Li Shuizhen's mind, that furious question echoed relentlessly. Unable to stomach the toxic details any longer, she gently interrupted Wang Li, saying, "Let's skip to the absolute breaking point, what officially triggered the divorce." Because out of nowhere, Wang Li scoffed. That toxic woman claimed my best friend didn't care about her feelings anymore. She weaponized that exact pathetic excuse to aggressively demand a legal separation. At first, my buddy thought, fine, let's just end this nightmare, since he was completely burnt out anyway. But the absolute moment they initiated the asset division process, he discovered that his wife had already deviously re-registered the vast majority of his premarital properties into legally binding joint marital assets. Now she is ruthlessly demanding a 50-50 split. Worse yet, all of their actual liquid savings had already been completely drained by her to buy luxury designer bags, exorbitant skincare lines, and thousands of dollars in non-refundable aesthetic clinic memberships if he proceeds with a standard divorce under these terms. My brother will literally be kicked to the curb completely penniless, ruining his entire life's hard work while she walks away filthy rich. Hearing the full scope of the scam, the absolute reality of the situation clicked in your mind. Falling out of love was just a convenient tactical smokescreen. The truth was the ATM's expiration date had finally arrived. Man, this brother woke up to reality way too late. If Wang Li's previous legal blunder made him a top-tier contender for the ultimate clown crown, then his childhood friend was officially the undisputed god-tier king of simp victims. She completely drained their liquid marital assets during the marriage. And the exact second she successfully hijacked his premarital real estate, she instantly manufactured a petty relationship excuse to execute a hostile exit strategy. This level of calculated malice was truly unprecedented. This strategic trap could be summed up in one single word: diabolical. You silently absorbed the final details of Wang Li's explanation before speaking up. Based on everything you've just broken down, I have a comprehensive strategic understanding of the overall board layout. Our firm is fully prepared to take this case and crush her. However, you must first secure your childhood friend's official consent on whether he wants to formally retain our law firm to launch this counteroffensive. Only after he signs the binding retainer can we legally execute our tactical countermeasures. I completely understand, Senior Attorney Su. The very second I head back, I will immediately lay everything out for my boy. After warmly sending off Wang Li and the elderly Wang Zizhang couple, you casually weighed the heavy jet black security pouch in your hand, then turned to Li Xuezhen and said, "Alright, you can pause the forum marketing for now. Go ahead and draft a comprehensive legal breakdown of the civil dispute that Wang Li just outlined while I step out for a quick errand." 2259 Li Xuezhen swiftly cleared her desk. Li Xuezhen meticulously packed away her legal documents and cleared the table, clutching her freshly detailed legal notepad as she gave an eager, disciplined nod. Meanwhile, you exited the sleek premises of Baijun Law Firm and made a direct beeline straight to the nearest bank teller, depositing the entire 120,000 yuan neatly into your corporate account. With this fresh injection of 120,000 yuan stacked on top of your previous balance, your total liquidity shot up to just over 150,000 grand. The firm's looming existential debt crisis was officially completely neutralized. Glancing down at the instant balance notification blinking on your phone, you finally unblocked your hard-nosed landlord from your blacklisted contacts. For the first time in months, you didn't feel a surge of pure dread over getting hit with text alerts, reminding you exactly when next month's astronomical rent payment was due. By around 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, right as the golden twilight hour was beginning to settle over the city, your smartphone suddenly buzzed with an incoming call from Wang Li. He confirmed that he had completely sold his childhood buddy on the idea, and they were officially retaining Baijun Law Firm to spearhead the entire litigation. They were already on their way to the office to break down the battle strategy. You instantly signaled Li Xuezhen to get the conference room prepped. Li Xuezhen was practically beaming with excitement over landing another major case. The previous showdown was an intense criminal trial, from which she had absorbed a spectacular amount of high-tier litigation strategy. This upcoming clash was a pure civil warfare scenario, focusing squarely on highly lucrative cutthroat matrimonial law. She was absolutely dying to uncover the raw, unadulterated facts regarding just how deeply Wang Li's childhood friend had been systematically ruined. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Wang Li to escort his broken companion straight through the doors of Baijun Law Firm. Honestly, comparing him to the burly Wang Li, you genuinely felt like this childhood friend of his looked like a shell of a man who had just staggered out of a brutal prison camp. His posture was completely defeated, utterly devoid of any vital energy or life force. It was painfully obvious that this catastrophic marriage had inflicted severe soul-crushing trauma upon him. Once they settled into the premium leather sofas, Wang Li cleared his throat and briefly introduced his beleaguered brother, whose name was Zhang Tongwei. Compared to Wang Li's highly emotional summary from earlier, Zhang Tongwei, being the actual victim, began articulating the nightmare with precise detail, offering immense high-value strategic utility for building the lawsuit. You leaned back, completely locked in, intently analyzing every word of Zhang Tongwei's testimony, as he exposed the critical moving pieces of this devastating asset fraud. Every now and then, you interjected with razor-sharp questions targeting the most critical legal vulnerabilities. After 1.5 hours of intense, meticulous interrogation, you finally unraveled every single layer of this deceptive plot. They had been married for 3 years with no children, meaning there were absolutely zero child support obligations to worry about. Their actual shared liquid assets were practically non-existent. In fact, they were buried under a mountain of mutual marital liabilities. As for Zhang Tongwei's highly lucrative premarital assets, specifically those 3 prime real estate properties, 2 of them had somehow been successfully reclassified as joint marital assets. This particular detail immediately triggered your absolute curiosity. According to the strict letter of the matrimonial law, any assets acquired by either party prior to the marriage are completely unequivocally protected under statutory shield. Even if Zhang Tongwei had liquidated those properties for raw cash, the capital would still legally retain its status as protected premarital wealth. Furthermore, Any market appreciation on those estates would also remain locked under that same category. How on earth did Zhang Tongwei's manipulative snake of a wife manage to legally hijack them and convert them into split-eligible community property? How exactly did these two real estate titles get legally re-registered as shared marital assets? The moment you brought up this specific catastrophic blunder, Zhang Tongwei looked like he wanted to violently slap his own face in pure regret. Back then, my wife was throwing an absolute tantrum raging at me, and no matter how much I begged or what I bought, she refused to back down, driven to complete desperation. I practically pleaded with her, asking what it would take to finally make her stop. She demanded that I write a formal signed declaration of commitment, which explicitly included a clause regarding the unconditional gifting of those property titles. At that moment, completely blinded by the urge to just pacify her and end the screaming, I stupidly put pen to paper and signed exactly what she dictated. I had absolutely no idea that a brainless slip of paper could actually be weaponized as definitive legal evidence to strip me of my estate during a divorce. And the nightmare doesn't even stop there. Right now, even though our divorce hasn't been finalized, she is aggressively maxing out lines of credit and taking out massive loans, claiming she's buying high-end household necessities. She openly boasts that the more debt she piles up, the better. Because since I refuse to sign a mutual separation, every single dollar she borrows automatically becomes our legally shared marital debt, say. This was clearly a calculated, highly malicious conspiracy to fabricate marital liabilities. However, because she was cleverly masking her spending as standard household upkeep, proving that she was intentionally manufacturing these massive liabilities in bad faith, was an incredibly difficult uphill battle to validate in a court of law. It was glaringly obvious that Zhang Tongwei's toxic wife was a ruthless, cold-blooded tactician. Suddenly, a sharp intuition flashed through your mind as you picked up on a pattern. Tell me, does your wife happen to have any close friends who practice law? Zhang Tongwei knit his brows in deep thought, trying to remember. Honestly, no, she doesn't have anyone like that in her direct circle. However, right here in the Nandu region, there is this highly prominent, notorious female matrimonial attorney who constantly uploads viral short videos, viciously breaking down exact methods for splitting marital assets. My wife practically binge-watched her content daily, and she used to smugly taunt me saying if we ever split up, she would instantly retain that specific lawyer to spearhead the lawsuit and leave me utterly ruined and penniless. Back then we were newly married, so I just laughed it off as a bad joke. But Senior Attorney Sue, now that you forcefully bring it up, the puzzle pieces are finally clicking together. How on earth did you manage to pinpoint that detail? A sharp jolt of pure shock and awe flashed across Zhang Tongwei's eyes. Your lips subtly curled upward into a confident, knowing smirk, based entirely on the meticulous breakdown Zhang Tongwei had just provided. This entire nightmare was a textbook execution of manipulating legal loopholes, specifically engineered to systematically bleed the husband completely dry. How could an ordinary, mathematically average woman possess such an insanely calculated, highly sophisticated legal scheme? It was screamingly obvious that she had a mastermind orchestrating her moves from the shadows, and that mastermind was undoubtedly an elite, hyper-specialized matrimonial tactician. Only a seasoned, battlefield-hardened divorce lawyer would understand the micro details of community property shifting and premarital asset vulnerabilities with such clinical precision. The tragic reality is that ordinary citizens have absolutely zero clue regarding the correct ironclad legal measures required to bulletproof their own premarital holdings, leaving them wide open to getting completely blindsided by calculated exploiters. This is precisely why seasoned men always jokingly warn, never marry a woman who treats the law like a weapon, especially one who is obsessed with the dark side of matrimonial codes. Otherwise, you are constantly walking on a minefield ready to fall into a lethal trap that will strip you down to your absolute underwear, forcing you out onto the streets completely naked and penniless, realizing all your years of brutal hustle merely served to fund a parasite's luxury lifestyle. Before you could even formulate a direct answer to Zhang Tongwei's question, Wang Li, sitting right beside him, grew instantly impatient and cut in. Bro, Senior Attorney Sue is a legendary high-tier legal powerhouse. A simple deduction like that is absolute child's play for a mind like his. By throwing out a question like that, aren't you subtly disrespecting Senior Attorney Sue's god-tier professional intuition? Just think about it. If it weren't for Senior Attorney Sue's miraculous intervention, I would still be rotting away in a maximum security detention cell right now. Senior Attorney Sue isn't just a master of elite criminal defense. His tactical mastery over civil matrimonial litigation is equally unmatched. Listening to the fierce, absolute reverence radiating from his childhood best friend, Zhang Tongwei felt his internal evaluation of your legal capabilities instantly skyrocket to a whole new staggering plateau of awe. The sheer depth of your brilliance was terrifying. Excelling seamlessly in both high-stakes criminal defense and complex matrimonial law means you are a true master of both arenas, cementing your reputation as an elite, omnipotent legal powerhouse. This revelation instantly injected a massive wave of confidence straight into Zhang Tongwei. Senior Attorney Sue, Given the absolute disaster of my current predicament, is there still a viable tactical solution? I desperately need to know what are our actual realistic chances of completely crushing her in court. And if we secure a decisive victory, how much of my stolen wealth can I actually claw back? A thick layer of suffocating anxiety flashed deep within Zhang Tongwei's eyes. After all this massive fortune represented, the blood, sweat, and tears that his elderly parents had sacrificed their entire lives to build. In a prime metropolitan hub like Nandu, a single real estate property commands millions of yuan, leaving all of that generational wealth served on a silver platter to a toxic woman after just 3 years of marriage. A marriage that had failed to yield even a single beautiful, cherished memory was a bitter pill he absolutely refused to swallow. Every single time these agonizing thoughts flashed through his mind, he felt an overwhelming urge to violently slap himself across the face. What on earth was he even thinking back then? Did he seriously sacrifice everything for her toxic, explosive temper, or for her completely average looks? In the end, he could only curse his own absolute naivety and foolishness for being so blindingly young. Observing his silent torment, you calmly took a slow, deliberate sip of hot tea, before laying out a clinical, razor-sharp preliminary analysis of the board. Your specific legal predicament is exceptionally intricate and highly volatile. Under standard legal precedent, if you proceed with standard domestic relations litigation, there is a high statistical probability you will only retain about 60% of your current asset pool, meaning you would still be legally forced to surrender a staggering 40% of your net worth to the opposing party. Worse yet, that devastating split would include absorbing her massive personal debts, since she expertly masked those liabilities under the statutory guise of essential household expenditures. However, if you formally retain the elite services of our law firm, I can definitively guarantee that we will shield at least 2 of your prime real estate properties from being touched or divided by the opposition. As for the remaining variables, it's too early to make an absolute guarantee. So the choice is yours. Are you ready to formally retain our firm to launch this offensive? Hearing your ironclad reassurance, Zhang Tongwei felt his heart race with pure unadulterated excitement. He had already desperately consulted with a dozen other mainstream law firms across the city, and every single standard attorney gave him the exact same grim, defeated prognosis. He would inevitably have to bleed out at least 40% of his multi-million yuan real estate assets. Surrendering millions of his parents' hard-earned cash to a manipulative, toxic gold digger was an agonizing reality that was actively eating him alive. Yet here you were boldly taking an absolute definitive stance, guaranteeing that at least 2 entire properties would remain completely untouched. To Zhang Tongwei, this was nothing short of a miraculous, life-saving breakthrough. Yes, I want to retain you. I absolutely retain you, Senior Attorney Su. From this exact second onward, my entire divorce warfare is officially and exclusively placed in the hands of Baijun Law Firm. Excellent. Since you've officially signed the retainer, you need to mentally prepare yourself to launch a ruthless legal offensive against your wife. You paused, your eyes gleaming with the absolute malice. We are going to indict her on criminal charges of grand fraud. The second those words left your mouth, Wang Li and Li Shuazhen's jaws dropped in absolute horizontal bewilderment. Wait, aren't we dealing with a straightforward divorce case here? How on earth are we hitting his wife with criminal charges for grand fraud? Zhang Tongwei was completely, utterly flabbergasted. Senior Attorney Su, I came here specifically to file for a divorce litigation. You slowly raised both hands to gently massage your throbbing temples, staring straight into Zhang Tongwei's bewildered eyes. Let's look at the grand strategy. What is the ultimate tactical objective of your divorce litigation? At the end of the day, isn't it to successfully dissolve this marriage? And more importantly, isn't your core intent to completely block that parasitic woman from stealing your real estate and draining your generational wealth? That is absolutely correct. Senior Attorney Su, that manipulative woman has done nothing but leech off my hard-earned cash. And now, after barely 3 years of a sham marriage, she's trying to scheme away 40% of my properties. I would rather die than let her walk away with my life savings. Well then, everything aligns perfectly. By striking her with a criminal indictment for grand fraud, I can absolutely guarantee that we will effortlessly secure both of your primary objectives, as long as we fully achieve your absolute goals. Do you really give a damn whether the lawsuit is technically labeled a divorce case or a criminal prosecution? You fired off those 3 consecutive heavy-hitting questions, confronted by your overwhelming razor-sharp logic. Zhang Tongwei vigorously shook his head. No, not even a little bit. Then the problem is solved. The specific legal classification of the lawsuit is completely irrelevant. Zhang Tongwei carefully processed this mind-blowing strategic breakdown in his head. And right as the realization finally hit him like a freight train, he stared at you in absolute wide-eyed shock. Senior Attorney Su, are you telling me that we can actually lock that toxic woman behind bars? You calmly shook your head. I cannot give you an absolute guarantee on jail time just yet. My only definitive guarantee is that your assets and core demands will be bulletproofed. Now, since we have clearly established the specific scope of our legal retainment and objectives, if you don't have any further objections, Let's go ahead and officially execute the retainer agreement. As for the legal fees, they will be calculated at a flat 10% of the total value of that disputed 40% property equity. If those terms are completely acceptable to you, we can sign the binding contract right now. Zhang Tongwei instinctively hesitated for a brief moment, silently wondering if the legal retainer premium was a bit too steep. Seeing this, Wang Li violently slapped Zhang Tongwei hard across the shoulder. What on earth are you still hesitating for, bro? He's guaranteeing your freedom and clawing back millions in endangered real estate. Hell, on top of all that, there is a massive statistical probability of throwing that toxic vampire straight into a prison cell. A mere 10% premium is an absolute steal. If I were in your shoes right now, I'd gladly hand over a full 20% just to watch that monster get dragged away in handcuffs. My absolute top priority is to permanently lock that scumbag away behind bars for a solid 20% of his life. I wouldn't hesitate for a single fraction of a second. What on earth are you still overthinking right now? To hell with that absolute joke of a marriage. Zhang Tongwei nervously opened and closed his mouth, but the words completely caught in his throat. You calmly took another slow sip of hot tea, patiently waiting for him to process the heavy reality. 2 prime rezoned properties in metropolitan Nandu easily commanded a staggering market value of several million yuan. A small percentage of that still equated to hundreds of thousands of cold cash. So it was completely natural for an average citizen to flinch at such a massive premium. Yet this tactical pricing was already incredibly generous. In standard domestic relations litigation, the industry baseline retainer fee typically hovers anywhere between 10% to 30%, meaning you had already offered him the absolute rock bottom entry rate. After 2 minutes of grueling silence, Zhang Tongwei finally steeled his resolve. Senior Attorney Su, I'm all in. Let's officially sign the retainer agreement right now. With hundreds of thousands of yuan practically locked into your account, you celebrated a quiet victory in your head, while signaling Li Shuizhen to go print the official legal retainer documents. Once the signatures were finalized, you instructed Zhang Tongwei to clear an initial 5,000 yuan filing fee for the upcoming litigation, promising a transparent itemized refund for any leftover balance. An absolute gold standard honest transaction. The absolute moment Zhang Tongwei and Wang Li exited the premises, Li Shuizhen clutched her neatly cross-referenced discovery files and marched straight back into your private office. Senior Attorney Su, are we genuinely launching a full-scale criminal indictment for grand fraud against Zhang Tongwei's toxic wife? Of course, the binding corporate retainer is already signed. So did you honestly think I was just playing games here? The very second Zhang Tongwei finishes compiling and transferring his raw digital evidence over to our database, we are immediately submitting the formal criminal indictment to the authorities. While Li Shuizhen was completely blown away by your bold strategy, a thrilling surge of pure adrenaline rushed through her veins. She had fully expected to grind through a tedious, mundane civil dispute, never imagining it would escalate into a high-stakes, explosive criminal prosecution. Alright, cut the celebration for a second. I am officially assigning you an incredibly critical deep-cover Black Ops mission. I need you to locate that viral short video account run by the notorious matrimonial lawyer, whom Zhang Tongwei mentioned his wife was constantly idolizing. Infiltrate her comment sections daily, acting like a bitter, deeply scorned housewife, and aggressively secure a live on-air consultation spot with her. That live interaction is going to be our absolute smoking gun evidence. Understood, Senior Attorney Su. I will execute the operation flawlessly. Understood, loud and clear. Li Shuizhen didn't fully comprehend the hidden tactical motive behind your instructions, but she knew the moment you labeled it as smoking gun evidence, it would inevitably deliver a catastrophic game-changing blow to the defense. And since it was bound to play such a monumental role in crushing the opposition, as an ambitious intern attorney, she considered this her absolute sacred mission. If she could execute this critical sting operation flawlessly, then she, a mere rookie intern, would officially be playing a pivotal legendary role in securing a massive courtroom victory. When night finally fell, the hardworking law student packed up her things and headed straight back to her dorm room at the Nandu University of Law. Inside the cozy dormitory, her chatty roommates were eagerly mapping out their fun weekend plans, while Li Shuizhen remained completely glued to her smartphone screen, intently hunting down the high-profile digital profile Zhang Tongwei had mentioned. Soon enough, the viral video creator's flashy bio popped up on her screen. Senior Attorney Yi Fei, deeply embedded in matrimonial litigation for over a decade. Veteran champion of hundreds of cutthroat divorce battles. Master strategist with absolute expertise in navigating the intersection of marital law and criminal codes. 2,571. Li Shuizhen snapped her headphones on, tuning out the noise. Li Shuizhen slowly slipped on her high-fidelity headphones and tapped straight into Attorney Yi Fei's highly lucrative social media homepage. The entire feed was filled with nothing but aggressively eye-catching provocative titles. How modern women in marriage can absolutely weaponize the system to safeguard their financial rights. The ultimate guide to ensuring your ex walks away completely penniless and ruined, while you secure the lion's share of joint marital wealth. Planning a hostile exit. How to guarantee you walk away with the absolute maximum financial payload. Women absorb 100% of the sacrifices in a marriage. Here is the blueprint to forcefully utilize the legal system as a lethal sword to shield your ultimate interests. Lee Suejin's slender fingers swiped across the glass, clicking through one meticulously curated algorithm-boosting video after another. The more she watched, the harder her eyebrows knit together in sheer disgust. How could she even describe the twisted substance of these clips? Strategizing to protect your legal assets during a standard divorce was a completely normal, legally justifiable practice. However, attorney Yefei's highly calculated video tutorials were explicitly designed to exploit gray areas and weaponize legal loopholes, actively coaching women on how to systematically hijack and strip away their husband's protected premarital estates by deliberately engineering these legal blind spots. Put bluntly, she was essentially teaching her massive audience how to legally heist a partner's private premarital fortune. Worse yet, the toxic comment sections were filled with thousands of rabid fans cheering in pure triumph. Dozens of radical followers were arrogantly bragging about the massive multi-million-dollar payouts they had successfully extorted, leaving behind a sickening trail of envious supportive replies right underneath. "Ugh, I'm so jealous, Queen. You really secured the bag and drained him this time, didn't you? Drop the blueprint, sis. Let us all bask in your glorious absolute victory. Major props to you, sis. You are an absolute savage for pulling that off, so. Absolute goals, Queen. I am definitely taking notes for my own future exit strategy. Let's go." Ha ha ha. Oh, stop it, girls. It really wasn't even that massive of a payout. Honestly, the real credit goes to attorney Yefei for being such an absolute legal beast. I retained her services directly, and even though my ex and I hadn't generated a single dime of joint marital assets, I still walked away with the staggering 60% of his entire net worth. The toxic feed was entirely clogged with endless brags of the exact same nature. The further down this digital rabbit hole she ventured, the tighter and more fiercely Li Shuichen's brows knit together in pure disgust. This twisted, predatory behavior was something her moral compass completely failed to comprehend. To aggressively heist someone else's hard-earned generational wealth using calculated loopholes. This completely stripped away every single shred of basic human decency and morals. These corrupt individuals were literally treating the sacred institution of marriage like a cold transactional business venture. No scratch that this wasn't even a standard business transaction anymore. They were treating romance as a hyper-lucrative, low-risk financial liquidation scheme, cashing out hundreds of thousands or even millions of yuan after a single year of marriage. How was this not the absolute definition of a calculated marriage fraud? Staring at the horrific avalanche of toxic comments and predatory video content, Li Suojian, even looking at it from a woman's perspective, found herself utterly repulsed by this disgusting phenomenon, yet strictly for the sake of gathering ironclad discovery. The exact smoking gun evidence you desperately needed to crush the opposition. Li Shuizhen forced herself to start dropping carefully baited comments across the feed, leaving frantic pleas for urgent legal assistance under every single viral video. The very next morning, you woke up bright and early inside your private office at the firm. The original owner of the body used to live out of the firm to survive. And to maintain maximum operational convenience, you temporarily chose to crash on the office couch as well. But let's be real, the primary motive was still to save every single penny of liquidity. After a swift, refreshing morning cleanup, you meticulously adjusted your sharp corporate suit, and the moment you unlocked the front door, you found Li Shuizhen, already waiting eagerly at the entrance of the law firm. "Good morning, Senior Attorney Sute." Li Shuizhen flashed a bright, highly disciplined smile, her signature dimples popping, as she stepped confidently into the sleek office reception area. "Senior Attorney Su, late last night, I systematically targeted Attorney Yefei's viral videos, and left detailed, desperate cries for help across her entire feed. However, the opposing party has completely ignored my profile so far. Hand over your smartphone. Let me review the exact syntax of your comments." "Right away, Senior Attorney Su." Li Shuizhen immediately unlocked her device and handed it over for your inspection. The absolute second your eyes scanned the text she wrote, your eyebrows knit into a sharp frown. "You seriously call this the desperate, unhinged rant of a bitter, scorned housewife?" Li Shuizhen's carefully crafted comment literally read, "Dear Attorney Yefei, I'm currently a full-time stay-at-home mother, and my daily life is currently tracking at a very low level of personal satisfaction. Could you please throw me a lifeline, sir?" If you were standing in that influencer attorney's shoes, you wouldn't give this bland textbook message a single second of your attention either, simply because it lacked any high-stakes, emotional trigger or financial bait to turn heads. With a heavy sigh, you instantly deleted every single weak comment that Li Shuizhen had painstakingly posted across the platform. Then your fingers morphed into a blur of lightning-fast speed, hammering out a massive, expertly engineered paragraph directly into the thread, before aggressively hitting the post button. You casually slid the smartphone back across the desk to Li Shuizhen. "Take the exact high-yield narrative template I just crafted. Spam it across her top-performing videos a few more times. and push it straight into her private direct messages as well. Li Xuezhen's eyes dilated to the absolute size of saucers as she hyper-focused on the toxic high-level bait you had just uploaded. Dear Attorney Ye Fei, I desperately need your elite counsel. I am currently trapped as a miserable stay-at-home housewife. My tech executive husband commands a massive 7-figure salary, owns 3 high-end residential luxury estates right here in Nandu, plus a massive custom-built penthouse suite, putting our total shared net worth at an easy 30 million yuan. I am utterly determined to initiate a hostile divorce. Yet, I absolutely refuse to compromise a single shred of my current high-end lifestyle. I am completely paralyzed with anxiety right now. I desperately need to know if you have a bulletproof strategy to secure my future. Please save me. The desperate plea was capped off with a weeping, highly dramatic prayer emoji. Senior Attorney Su, is blasting a narrative like this seriously going to work? Without a shadow of a doubt, what do you think an influencer like Ye Fei actually craves when she preaches divorce warfare? Is she doing it out of the goodness of her heart? Absolutely not. She is hunting exclusively for massive premium legal retainers. Think about it. If she successfully heists 60% of a multi-million-dollar estate and commands a premium contingency fee ranging anywhere between 10% to 30%, she walks away with a staggering 6-figure payout from a single client, securing hundreds of thousands of yuan off a single legal casualty. Multiply that by just 10 desperate marks and she's banking tens of millions annually. To make it even juicier, these domestic asset stripping litigations are legally basic, carrying almost zero professional liability or risk. It's a pure unadulterated cash cow. 2,691. To be completely honest, even you felt a brief flash of professional envy at the sheer profitability. To be completely brutally honest, even you are starting to feel slightly tempted by this insane offer. However, building a legal empire on this specific brand of litigation and aggressively advertising it online is a fast track to getting permanently disbarred. Before you could even articulate your thoughts out loud, Li Xuezhen let out a sharp audible gasp of pure bewilderment. Senior Attorney Su, Attorney Ye Fei just slid into my DMs. How on earth did she reply this obscenely fast? Even you were slightly taken aback by the instantaneous response time. Though analyzing it logically, it made complete operational sense. After all, a mark flaunting a juicy 30 million yuan net worth is the absolute definition of a gold-tier whale client waiting to be harpooned. She explicitly replied that she can spearhead my litigation. However, she demands that I provide dynamic proof of assets first, and once that is verified, she will immediately grant me access into her elite VIP client circle. You let out 2 slightly awkward forced coughs. Providing a multi-million-dollar asset verification is going to be a major tactical hurdle. But right as you were intensely brainstorming a workaround, Li Xuezhen looked up with a deadpan expression and asked, Senior Attorney Su, I've already been successfully vetted and added to her exclusive VIP mastermind group. What is our next tactical move? Your eyes instantly widened to the absolute size of dinner plates. It had never even crossed your mind that Li Xuezhen was a low-key ultra-wealthy heiress. But tracking it logically, if a standard undergraduate student possessed a completely mundane, ordinary family background, how on earth could she have been personally handpicked and mentored by the absolute titans of the legal academic world? Connecting those high-level dots, the whole picture suddenly made flawless sense. In reality, Li Xuezhen had just effortlessly flashed a tiny microscopic fraction of her real family's staggering net worth to clear the verification. Noticing your deeply stunned expression, Li Xuezhen frantically tried to cover her tracks. Senior Attorney Su, I actually just photoshopped some random asset certificates I found on the web, and I can't believe that clout-chasing influencer actually fell for it. Do I seriously look like I have the word idiot tattooed across my forehead? Your lips twitched subtly as you sighed. Sure, whatever you say. Now was definitely not the strategic time to blow her cover. Clearing your throat might need to break the tension. You decided not to press her on the matter. Moving forward, I need you to meticulously screenshot every single conversation and strategy shared inside this influencer's private mastermind group. Furthermore, archive and download every single piece of her video content. The exact moment she requests a live stream to coach you on your exit strategy. Ensure the entire interaction is being recorded in high definition. Once Zhang Tongwei finishes compiling the mountain of digital discovery I instructed him to gather, and our evidence portfolio is completely ironclad, we will formally submit the indictment and initiate full-scale court proceedings. Li Xuezhen nodded with intense absolute solemnity. Leaning comfortably back into your office sofa, you smiled, knowing every single trap on this legal chessboard had been flawlessly set. All that was left was to trigger the litigation and let the carnage unfold in court. This upcoming trial was bound to yield some highly spectacular explosive surprises. You took a slow, satisfied sip of hot tea. True to form, it didn't take long for Zhang Tongwei to fully compile and deliver every single piece of data you requested. After instructing Li Xuezhen to format the discovery into a flawless legal brief, she marched straight down to the district court to submit the formal indictment. Shortly after, the court officially processed and accepted the case. Meanwhile, over at Zhang Tongwei's residence, Zhang Tongwei silently watched his toxic wife Xiejing, dragging home another massive haul of merchandise purchased entirely on credit. A deep wave of pure disgust and irritation flashed across his eyes. Xiejing instantly noticed his glare and started shrieking in an incredibly arrogant voice. "Oh, what's wrong, you mad bro, annoyed just looking at me? If you hate my guts so much, then man up and file for a damn divorce already. As long as you keep dragging your feet and refuse to divorce me, I will gladly run up 2,000 yuan a day buying endless designer furniture and daily luxury knickknacks. Every single item I buy is for the house anyway, so you technically benefit from it too. It's not like I'm exclusively shopping for myself, right? Under the law, this is strictly classified as essential marital debt. Even if you stubbornly refuse to sign those divorce papers, you are still legally on the hook to clear half of these massive liabilities. Let me be completely transparent. I haven't hauled your pathetic ass to court yet, purely out of respect. So if I were you, I'd sign my name on that divorce settlement agreement before things get truly ugly." Xiejing continued her unhinged, non-stop toxic tirade. Her claiming she didn't want to sue him was an absolute bold-faced lie. However, she knew that if she initiated the divorce litigation herself right now, she lacked a legally compelling high ground justification, meaning she might not secure the massive multi-million-dollar asset payout she craved. Therefore, her grand strategy required forcing the husband to pull the trigger first. But since Zhang Tongwei refused to be played for a fool, she resorted to this grueling war of attrition, subjecting him to psychological torment day after day, just to forcefully break his spirit and demand a divorce. Zhang Tongwei stared coldly at the manipulative monster standing before him, his face etched with profound absolute apathy. Without saying a word, he casually tossed a certified courier envelope onto the living room sofa. That right there is a formal court summons. I highly suggest you read every single line very carefully. The absolute second the word court left his lips, Xiejing's eyes lit up with pure unadulterated excitement. She practically power walked across the floor, rushing over to the sofa like a kid on Christmas, and aggressively snatched up the legal package. Tearing the envelope open, she sneered arrogantly. "Honestly, think about it. Wouldn't your life be so much easier if you had just signed the settlement agreement from the very beginning? It's not like you haven't consulted a dozen attorneys already. Dragging this into a litigation battle just means you're bleeding out even more cash for legal fees. Why suffer the extra financial damage?" Xiejing grinned ear to ear as she extracted the document. She was entirely convinced this was a standard run-of-the-mill civil divorce suit, but the very second her eyes locked onto the specific text of the official summons, her pupils violently dilated in absolute localized shock. Staring at the legal notice in complete utter disbelief, she whirled around toward Zhang Tongwei and roared at the absolute top of her lungs, "Zhang Tongwei, we are supposed to be having a normal civil dispute over a broken marriage. How in the absolute hell do you have the audacity to indict me on criminal charges for grand fraud? I just swore it. Zhang Tongwei, you better look me in the eye and tell me what the hell this means. We are supposed to be dissolving a marriage, so what in the absolute world do you mean by throwing me in handcuffs for grand fraud?"